Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us today for our event, Inclusive Tech for Our Times, Supporting Inclusivity in 2021 and beyond. We're really thrilled to say that throughout the day, you will be delivered a variety of presentations. Some will be interactive, some will share with you new knowledge, and some will make you laugh. But hopefully, all of them you will thoroughly enjoy. And at the end, there will also be an interactive quiz for you all to take part in, and there will be some prizes up for grabs. So please do check your inbox for the email we sent yesterday, which shares details on how to take part in that quiz. If you do have any questions about anything throughout today, though, please post them into the Zoom chat, and myself and my colleague Louise will be on hand to help you out with that. Another thing to note is that you can also take a look at today's agenda by copying and pasting the link, which Louise is just going to send into the Zoom chat, into your browser, and this will take you to this Ayoa public mind map. You can see the events we have throughout the day, and if you log in to the top right, you'll also be able to add branches to send questions to our presenters, and also access some resources which are related to their presentations. Together though, all of our events today will cover the topics of inclusivity, assistive technology, and neurodiversity. So to get things started, I'd like to hand you over to two keynote speakers who know a thing or two about those topics. We've got Chris Griffiths, who is the CEO of Ayoa, and Nick Posford, the CEO of the British Dyslexia Association. So over to you, Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ross. Really appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. It looks like it's going to be a great day. There's a great lineup of speakers. I wanted to say a big thanks to Ross and Louise for organizing this. You know, we all live busy lives and time is precious. So to see Ross and Louise making sure that everyone gets the absolute most out of this day was crucial. It's going to be entertaining, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be educational. So really appreciate the work by the team in making this happen. I've always had a passion for understanding metacognition. Metacognition means thinking about thinking and putting your strategy behind thinking. It's quite an interesting time at the moment, because let me ask you a question. Do you believe that knowledge is more important than creativity? Just think about that. Is knowledge more important than creativity? You see, people used to say that knowledge was power. Then people would say that the use of knowledge was power. But actually, in today's fast-paced environment, where a lot of things are being automated and artificial intelligence is starting to come to the fore, the real power is the creation of new knowledge. And this is really important, because in the next 10 minutes, I want to talk to you about how people with neurological differences have some strengths that neurotypical people simply don't have. And the science shows this. We need to make more of this, and it's very important that people understand why this is the case. So, I mean, just look at Scientific American, great publication, very well respected. They've done a lot of research into how people with ADHD, how they actually have improved creative capabilities. They found things such as creative cognition, conceptual expansion, overcoming knowledge constraints was far greater in people with ADD than neurotypical people. And this isn't to be unexpected. If you were to look at the ability of people to create, it often comes from their ability not to focus. It sounds crazy. We saw research in terms of scientists were trying to understand why people that daydream were able to actually come up with better ideas, more creative ideas. And it was because when they used functional magnetic resonance imaging on the brain, they found that when people daydreamed, the mind just lit up, basically all areas of the mind dealing with memory, dealing with cognitive function, that it would just light up. And this is not surprising because, you see, to be able to be creative, you've got to be able to join dots, which means you've got to give your brain the flexibility to be able to join those dots. And this is what they saw in the New Scientist, that very much backed up what research was coming out of Scientific American, is that if people overly focus, they're only then limiting themselves to certain areas of the brain. So they can never be as creative as others. So, for me, as somebody that's written several books on creativity, I've studied just about everything I can in terms of what that means. I've learned that there's no genetic disposition for creativity, and when people say they're not the creative type, that's just because they're afraid to be creative. So we almost need to look at celebrating the ability for people that can be creative naturally, and I think this is important part of the day. And what does that mean in real life? I've come across some really good examples. So for instance, René Carriol, who was the host of the television series Mind of a Millionaire. He interviewed lots of successful entrepreneurs. And I found the program fascinating. And because as someone that's really interested in how people think and how they operate, I picked up the phone. I said, René, I've got to meet you. I watched the TV program, and I want to know what you really learned, not what was shown on TV. I want to know what you learned. So we met up in London, and I asked him a very simple question. I said, René, what was the one thing you really noticed that all of these successful entrepreneurs had in common? And he said, Chris, it was amazing. He said, I wasn't expecting it, but more than half of them said that they were dyslexic or mildly dyslexic. Now, to me, that wasn't surprising, because you see, the ability for someone to think differently and to maybe not fit in an educational system that is based on sort of industrial ways of learning means that those types of individuals are bound to think differently. And it's the people that think differently that create new ideas and new concepts. These are the people that change the world. So, there are times where you have to use this strength. And I'd ask everyone to think about that. I mean, our educational systems teach one right answer thinking. There's only one right answer. Now that's crazy. We all know that. And my own example of educational system of the educational system was quite interesting, and it kind of set me down this path. I'm blessed. I run a software company. We've sold products into just about every country in the world. We've sold millions of software products over the years. I actually, when I was 18 years old doing my A-levels, I had an unclassified in computer science. I got the lowest of the low score in education. Education told me I couldn't be in computer software. How crazy is that? So I think we need to change the world and change how strengths are looked at, because some people have certain strengths that maybe aren't appreciated in the educational system. And this is why we created Ayoa. As somebody that's been a really strong supporter of mind mapping for the last 2 decades, blessed to work with Tony Bazan, the inventor of mind mapping, I've seen how much mind mapping has helped neurotypical users think divergently, and I've seen how mind mapping has helped those with neurological differences visualize their ideas and thoughts in meaningful and non-linear ways. So I've seen the difference it can make. So with Ayoa, it's for me, it's just such a rewarding activity to be involved with. So I know you're going to see a lot of Ayoa today, and hopefully you'll be able to play with it yourself and actually see how it can help. So my my final summary for today is, when you're talking about inclusive tech, you've got to look at what that means in the overall scheme of things. I mean, this is the first time in human history people are using computers and black boxes to do a lot of their work, a lot of their thinking, a lot of their collaboration, and they're not actually realizing what impact on it's having on people's brains, on their thinking, on their activities. A lot of the logic out there is broken at the moment. Productivity software is meant to help people get things done quickly, but quite often it helps them get the wrong things done. What it comes down to is that innovation is always the key driver. Creativity is vital in today's world, and neurodivergent thinkers that are able to think divergently can really use that strength to bring new ideas and concepts to the world. So I hope you all enjoyed the day. Have an absolutely fantastic learning experience. I'm going to hand over to Nick, who's the CEO of the British Dyslexia Association. It obviously a leading charity to ensure that neurodiversity is actively supported and encouraged, and that absolutely no one is left behind. And I know Nick and I spoke at length recently, and we're both passionate about the entrepreneurship side of this and really getting people to feel that they can go and achieve absolutely anything. So Nick, if I could hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can all hear me, and now I'm going to hopefully work the magic of sharing my screen. So hopefully you will all see my slides now as well. So I'm, as Chris said, I'm Nick Posford. I'm the Chief Exec of the British Dyslexia Association. I've been in post for about 6 months, and it's been a fascinating start to the role. But 25 years ago, I was a stage manager in theatre, and I worked in theatre in Coventry. We did a musical production of Our Day Out, which is a Willie Russell play. And we used the local youth theatre for many of the parts. And there was one very talented young boy called Ricky. And he came from a family that had no previous experience with theatre, hadn't been to the theatre, and weren't used to the kind of conventions and the expectations of theatre and what audiences should behave like. And so Ricky's mom came to see the show, and you know, he appeared on stage, and as part of his character, he was in a fight with another boy, and she was basically shouting from the circle to cheer on her son as he got involved in a punch-up. So for her, it was a bit like a football match, and so she was defying the kind of constraints of the situation in which she was. And there was obviously concerns amongst the theatre audience, and eventually security came and had to ask her to leave, which I think was a real shame, because in reality, you know, Ricky was incredibly talented. He was only about 8 years old, but he had a stunning voice, was a really powerful young actor. And I think the constraints that were put on him, when in fact the whole show was fun and youthful and so on, was really unfair. And back in the old days of theatre, actually, it was pretty uproarious. And I think some of the more sedate approaches that we have nowadays are a more recent invention. But I think really what it illustrates is the difficulties that come when people get restricted by conventional approaches. And I think we're really focused within the British Dyslexia Association about getting people to recognise, getting the whole of society, but also particularly education and workplaces, to recognise the benefits of thinking differently, and to stop putting ourselves in boxes and stop putting others in boxes. There's no doubt that the school system and the exam system at the moment can be quite restrictive, and I think that has real implications for how people achieve. And in the 6 months I've been at the British Dyslexia Association, the amount of people I've met who had a really, really tough time at school were told that they were thick, were told that they wouldn't amount to anything in their lives, and were really demoralised and undermined. And actually, all of them now are really successful, are confident, and a lot of their success is very much down to their dyslexia. So I think the old school approach and the old school system is one that we really need to get rid of. And I think that's the key focus of today and of assistive technology more generally, is it's about giving that opportunity to people that the system and the constraints of the system often work against. And as I think of it, boxes are something that pets should really be given to play with, rather than things that we should be restricting ourselves with. And this is also true, you know, not just within the school system or higher education, but also as people move into the workplace. And there's no doubt that employers who don't recognise the benefits that come with neurodivergent thinking are really missing out on talent. So it's not just that they're also running the risk of going against equality legislation, which is really, really important, but it's also that they miss out on these unique skills and these particular talents. And Chris said in his opening talk about how, you know, he got a U in computer science at school, hugely successful company whose products have really had a major impact. You know, it shows the nonsense of a system where someone like that could be given such a negative appraisal in an exam system in school. And it's the same as people move into employment, and it's making sure that really all employers understand the benefits of neurodiversity. There are some that definitely have picked up on it. The classic example, DTHQ actively seek neurodiverse talent because they recognise the usefulness of that way of thinking. But really, we need a much wider understanding across all employers, across society more generally. That's going to be even more crucial as we come out of the COVID economic hit, and as we start to build a new world, really, because things have changed so dramatically over the last year that we can't go back to how things were before. Everyone has started to recognise that there are opportunities. Technology in its core role has been absolutely critical to the last year. And, you know, certainly us at the British Dyslexia Association, we are employing people to be home-based on a permanent basis, that we're looking at whether we need an office at all. We think there's certainly benefits to having that creativity of interacting with colleagues, but whether it needs to be that you're all in the same room is a matter of debate. So it's going to be really crucial in this new era that we take full advantage of the benefits that come with people that think differently, and they can drive that economic growth. And assistive tech and your importance in terms of the roles you have as professionals is going to be really crucial in helping to make sure that there is that opportunity for people with neurodiversity, with dyslexia, to really play a full role in the economic and wider development that happens in the post-COVID era. And just because of the things that we've done in the past, we don't need to do that in the future. I think we were living in a period of great change before COVID, and that's, you know, not going to go away either. We're in an era of huge technological shifts. There's huge challenges that need overcoming. We really need that creative thinking and that ability to come up with innovative ideas and new ideas. And to some extent, you know, it's a blank canvas. We can start afresh. We can start anew and use that innovation, use that creativity to make big changes. And, you know, that's very much something that has happened in the past. There's lots of people who are well known for their dyslexia and the achievements they've had. But it's not just about famous people and people who excel. It's also making sure that nobody who has dyslexia or any other form of neurodiversity is left behind or is not given the same opportunities as others. So it's really actually making sure that they have just the same chance to live the lives they want to lead, to be able to pursue the careers they want to contribute to the world in the ways that they want to. So it's not just about the sort of big names and the famous brands. It's also about normal people, everyday people being able to do what they want to do. And that's what's so crucial about assistive tech and making sure that people who may have particular needs in the systems that we currently have are given the opportunities that everyone else has and are able to do what they are capable of. And that's why the role of supporting them in a school system and supporting them through education and into the workplace is really, really crucial. I was speaking to someone only the other week who is on his way to becoming a surgeon and is clearly highly talented, will be someone who, you know, if he achieves his dream, will no doubt save many, many lives. And if he wasn't given the opportunities, and particularly around things like extra time and exams and so on, there's a risk that that talent would be lost, and all the lives that he could change in the future wouldn't have that opportunity to benefit from his talent. And that's why it's so important what you all do, and that's why assistive tech is such a crucial tool as well. And it's really about, you know, finding the next generation of Steve Jobs and the people who are going to change the world in the future, and making sure that anyone who has the potential to do that is also given the opportunity and is not restricted and prevented from doing so. And so for us at the British Dyslexia Association, that's what's so crucial, and that's what's driving our future strategy, is making sure that with all these big changes, with everything that's going on, that nobody is left behind. So do get in touch with myself or with my colleagues, and I hope you have a really interesting day. I'm sure just from seeing the speakers that it is going to be fascinating.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick, and for Chris for sharing your thoughts there and opening up today's event. I actually had the privilege for being in on a conversation where both Nick and Chris were talking about neurodiversity and innovation. So I know for a fact it's quite difficult for them to constrict that to 15 minutes or so. They could have carried on talking about those topics for a lot longer because they've got so much to share. But moving on to our first presentation of today, it is going to be ourselves here at Ayoa, and similarly it might be a bit of a squeeze for us to fit everything in just into half an hour when it comes to our piece of assistive software, which I'm going to use throughout this presentation. I'm also going to use alongside you in some interactive activities and show some of its best features for neurodivergent individuals, whilst we think about how the remote learning situation and the likely remote working world of tomorrow can be improved in terms of neuro-inclusivity. Addressing the remote world we are currently living in at the point when young people take to higher and further education is really important. That's because this part of their lives is usually when they meet new people and develop teamwork and social skills even further. They take their first steps of more independent learning, which will hopefully secure them a career, and they acquire skills which they will rely upon regardless of what professional path they take. So colleges and universities are therefore often the gateway for the professionals of tomorrow. However, the professional world they are likely to enter afterwards is undoubtedly going to be very different to what existed before 2020. So we need to be mindful of that. And despite the best efforts of everyone in education, it is undeniable that remote learning is taking its toll on students in numerous ways. For instance, 76.8% disclosed that they were battling with anxiety, and 74.6% are experiencing stress. Friendships and relationships are an issue for 37% of students, and nearly 2/3 of university graduates feel negative about their career prospects as a result of the pandemic. Undeniably, it's all very concerning and highlights that for students to feel positive about their lives and their future, which they're investing at least £9,000 a year in, a lot more has to be done. Collectively though, those stats also emphasise that going to college or university serves as much of a social education as it does an academic one. They are both equally important. Now, we're not here today to try and overhaul the education system. Instead, we want to share with you a real solution, which will mean that neurodivergent students can continue to work in a way which is best for them, interact with fellow students despite remote learning, develop skills outside of their course, which they will need as the first generation of graduates seeking employment in our increasingly digital world. Ayoa is the tool we're going to lean heavily on for two main reasons. Firstly, it is an accredited piece of assistive software by the UK Government's Disabled Students Allowance Scheme and the British Dyslexia Association, meaning that it is proven to support students with neurological differences. And secondly, because it enables real-time collaboration, resulting in it being used by teams at Cambridge University, the BBC, Continental Tires, Samsung, and many more, who all rely on Ayoa to run smoothly. They are the two key attributes of Ayoa, but to return to the first one briefly, our status as assistive tech is founded upon the research into mind maps, which highlights that thanks to their visual format, they align well with our how our brains work and support our thoughts. Coupled with their colourfulness and lack of reliance upon words, mind maps are therefore a well-known resource for helping people with neurological differences. Whilst Ayoa consists of mind mapping capabilities, as the neuro-inclusive collaborative digital workspace, it does more than just that. And I know that title for Ayoa is quite a mouthful, but it is in fact a very intuitive piece of software, which, like I said, does so much more than mind mapping. It also includes task and project management, digital whiteboards, instant messaging, and video calls. But what has helped Ayoa in its quest to help neurodivergent students is the fact that mind maps were the starting block. They were here first, and as a result, their visual and intuitive nature has percolated into every other resource of Ayoa. So without further ado, we'd like to take a look at how Ayoa can support neurodivergent students even whilst remote learning persists. And to do so, we would like to invite some members of the audience to be involved with us today. So what we are proposing is that whilst there are many more people watching, we're going to pick just 12 audience members at random to work with us on an Ayoa mind map. And we're simply limiting numbers because we can't really imagine a group project involving more than 12 people. So can the following please listen out for their names. We have Craig Lindsay from Perth, Guy Brewer from Golexia, Annabelle Allison from East Anglia, Heather Griffiths from Newman, Anna Bevan from Cardiff, Kirsten Waiting from Leeds, Pauline Graham from Oxford, Lauren Gardner from Newport, Alice Cook from Diversity and Ability, Philip Royley from De Montfort, Sue Ashton from Durham, and Annabelle Waters from Bristol. You will hopefully see that a link has just been copied and pasted into the Zoom chat. And if you can put that into your browser and then log into your Ayoa account by clicking on the yellow button in the top right of your screen, you will then be able to access this public mind map, which I'm just showing you. Whilst they are all setting that up, I'm going to set the scene a bit better about what is going to take place. We are going to pretend that we are a group of media students who have been tasked with creating a group presentation based on the very topical question of how characters with neurodivergent qualities are portrayed in TV and film. First of all, we need to think of some characters and go about planning our presentation. But because we are all learning remotely, we still need a creative space to work together. So we have produced this Ayoa mind map as our starting point. And like I said, the first thing which we are going to have to do is think of some TV shows and some movies in which there are neurodivergent characters. So we have some prompting branches such as comedy, drama, sci-fi, etc., but we haven't thought of any sources to analyze yet. This, however, is the point at which today will become interactive. So for those 12 who have this mind map actually open on your screen, we would like you to click on any of these genre branches and then select the green plus or the blue icon below, drag it out, and then drop it to create your branch before typing in the name of a show or a movie which you think could help in our group presentation. So for example, I might click on to drama, grab the green plus, drag it out, then drop it, type in Queen's Gambit, which was a show on Netflix just recently, and then click on a blank space to finish typing. And that will be my contribution to the mind map and a suggestion of a show which we could analyze. But now I'm going to hand over to the 12 which I mentioned. And for the next minute, we'll hopefully all sit back and see some real-time collaboration in play and witness how easy it is for students to work together on a mind map such as this. So over to the 12, and hopefully we'll see some good shows and movies being added to our mind map. Whilst people are adding branches, we can see some happening already. It is a good time to note that this mind map is called an organic one because users are given the flexibility to place their branches wherever they like and curve them too. So in contrast to our earlier mind map, which was more rigid and structured, this one really draws on the visual nature of mind maps, allowing users to produce a resource with branches which reflect and strengthen their thoughts. We have 3 different styles of mind maps in Ayoa, so people can always find a way to work best for them. So I can see that we've got some suggestions added already. I'm just going to take a look at what's been added. Oh, we still got some more. Star Trek, Game of Thrones, Big Bang Theory, of course. Yeah, all brilliant shows which have neurodivergent characters in them. On our screens nearly every week, which is great, or on the big screen in the cinema. And that's really showing you how easy it is for real-time collaboration to take place between students despite remote learning going on. Now, the current task at hand might have been to think of some TV shows or movies to include in our presentation, but more often than not, people with neurological differences might flit from thought to thought. They might quite sporadically generate brilliant ideas, not necessarily related to the task at hand. However, any idea is a good idea, and people with neurological differences are renowned for generating creative ones. So these shouldn't go to waste. If we imagine then that we are still thinking about TV shows and films, but I, as a student, might already be thinking about the structure of our group presentation, for example. Well, instead of interrupting everyone else's flow, but also not suffocating this thought of mine, I can open the idea bank in the top left of the screen and safely store any idea which pops into my head. So, for example, I might think it would be good to analyze our sources by the decade which the show was filmed. And then I can click to save it here. It means that I don't forget it, I don't scribble it down on a scrap piece of paper and inevitably lose it, but instead, when the time is right, I can just drag and drop it onto my mind map. And as you can see, it's being placed there for me to share with the rest of the group. So that is another handy tool available in Ayoa, which is particularly helpful for neurodivergent students. But to return to our group presentation, and if we look at the green section over here, we've now got loads of different shows and films, probably too many actually. So we need to dwindle them down, which means some form of communication is going to have to take place. Working in different places instantly makes this difficult, and the whole remote work experience has probably sent some alarm bells ringing for people with varying neurological differences, when it comes to communication. For instance, for people with dyslexia, generally, the shift to remote learning would have caused concern because it inevitably meant a further reliance upon digital devices, the result being more text to contest with. Having an alternative to emails like Zoom is therefore really important to people with dyslexia. However, if we were to think generally about autism, yet again, a shift to remote learning probably caused some distress, not least when its change was so immediate and necessary. This is because people with autism tend to like structure and aren't usually as adept at enacting what might be classed as social norms. With the world turning upside down last year and everyone being forced to communicate in a new way where social norms flew out the window and were replaced by new ones, utilizing something such as Zoom could be something which people with autism were uncomfortable with. So whilst communication is undoubtedly vital, it is important to ensure that it can come in variations. And that is why in Ayoa, we have Ayoa Chat on the left here for group chats like you can see me opening here. And we also have private ones where you can talk just to individuals. If you click onto any branch, there is a comment section so you can just talk about that specific. And if you'd like some face-to-face communication, you can see at the bottom of the options, you can go straight into Zoom or use our own video conferencing functionality if needed. Whilst those modes of communication are available, in the interest of speed, however, for today, I am going to turn on this very handy and democratic feature of voting, which means no words nor video calls are needed. This is also going to be an interactive activity, which is open for everyone who has an Ayoa account to take part in. So for those of you who do, would you please copy and paste the link, which has just been sent into the Zoom chat, put it into your browser in another tab, and again, log into your Ayoa account by clicking the yellow button in the top right, which says login. Once everyone has done that, we are going to come to a collective decision by everyone being able to click onto a branch of a TV show or a movie and giving it a thumbs up to show which one they think we should include in our group presentation. So I've just voted for Star Wars, but I could also click on The Good Doctor. And as you can see, there's a thumbs up button just above it. And if you click on that, that will give it a vote. So in the next 30 seconds, please feel free to start adding some votes for which ones you'd like to include in our group presentation. So I can see that the Big Bang Theory at the top has got ahead to a quick start with 3 votes already in comparison to the other ones. It'll be interesting to see if people are going to vote for those which they think are necessarily best for our group presentation or just those shows which they really like. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. It looks like the Big Bang Theory is still ahead in the lead, which is a great show. And everyone else seems to be tied neck and neck, I'd say. Oh, the Queen's Gambit. So we'll go for the Big Bang Theory and the Queen's Gambit, both brilliant shows. Can't really disagree with those voting choices. But as you can see, some real-time collaboration taking place on your screens right here. And just like that, that means that we have a plan in place, which has been fully supported and created by the visual structure of a mind map, which permits a lot of freedom for expression. However, if you wanted an even greater ability to produce your work in a style which is best for you, we could have done exactly the same activity in an Ayoa whiteboard. So here is one which I made earlier. As you can see, when this loads up, an Ayoa whiteboard, within it, there are no set way to structure your work. Instead, I've been given the freedom to drag and drop all of these images, sticky notes, documents, GIFs, flowcharts, checklists, you name it, I can place anything imaginable into this digital whiteboard and have it formatted in a way which makes sense to me. So I have some suggestions of TV shows and movies up along the top here for our question. I've thrown in some images of these around the edge to act as inspiration. And then in the center, I have these colorful sections which are more dedicated to the actual work which we need to do for the group presentation. Now, whilst this is a highly intuitive resource for students, which enables them to dump all of their ideas onto, I'm sure that for some of you here today, you might have been concerned the moment we mentioned a whiteboard, simply due to its name. Well, although this whiteboard is currently exactly that colour, we can in fact change the background colour to be any colour of the rainbow, meaning that in the end, we could in fact be working in a mellow yellow board like we have now. And I should note that we can do this in our mind maps too. But anyway, with the plan in place for our group presentation, we now, however, need to make it happen. Again, not being in the same room with others could make this tricky, but as mentioned before, Ayoa also includes task and project management. So to make sure I definitely get my Blue Peter badge, here is another Ayoa resource that has been made earlier in advance for today. It is a task board, which relates directly to our mind map, and it will enable us as a group to continue working together. Now, in Ayoa, a task board is a collaborative space where everyone comes together to create, share, update, and ultimately complete tasks. Although this is essentially the project management section of Ayoa, being the neuro-inclusive collaborative digital workspace, it does differ from other pieces of project management. Straight away, you'll notice that we have something which isn't what you might expect when considering project management. It is extremely visual, bright, and I dare say maybe even bordering on fluid in how we have bubbles floating about. For certain though, it is anything but rigid. For someone who thinks visually, maybe someone with dyslexia, this would be a refreshing format to be faced with, giving them an aerial view of all the tasks they have going on. And the visual nature of it continues when we start adding task details. So if I click onto a task, it will open up the side panel, and here I can add people to the task, assign dates, also upload attachments and leave comments. So I'll do some of them now. I'll assign this final writing of our introduction for the group presentation to Rachel. And as you can see, having done so, her icon appears on the task. And she'll also receive a notification to know that she's been given that responsibility. Straight away then, Ayoa task boards are continuing to be visual and keeping things simple. And this continues when I might be wondering how far along Rachel is with this task, the final writing of our intro. You see, within the side panel of every task, there is something called the progress bar. Like everything else in Ayoa, it is designed to make things easier and visual, while straying away as far as possible from words. So I'm going to call on Rachel, who is in this task board alongside me, to slide along the progress bar of this task, which I just assigned to her. And if we give it a minute, hopefully we'll be able to see how far along she has got. So, okay, well, Rachel is a very quick worker. She's got on with that introduction very quickly. But the main point is that straight away, by merely glancing at our group task board, we can now all see how far this task has been progressed, thanks to the proportionate ring going around it, visually reflecting the work which has been done, and best of all, no words were required whatsoever. Similarly, just below the progress bar in our side panel, we have another pair of visual indicators called the urgency and importance scales. It's really down to personal preference how you use these, but once you've decided upon that, you could click on the lightning strike and then the orange box to symbolize that something is mildly urgent, or the flag and the red box to indicate that something is really important, for example. Once more, you will notice that they appear boldly and colourfully on our actual task, visually highlighting what is a priority whilst no words are needed. Now, so far, we have somehow planned our whole project with no real communication taking place, but we all know that is impossible. So yet again, we have therefore got the ability to start a video call and a video call either via Zoom or our own Ayoa video conferencing in our task boards. And if you click onto a task, there is also a comment section per task, as you can see on my screen now. And that brings us on to the second half of today's presentation, where we will be considering how to ensure that students can exercise and develop soft skills alongside those which their course will be directly nurturing. Communication is one of these, but there are many more which likewise will have been negatively impacted due to the real-world experience which forces you to learn communication, organisation, time management skills, and more being largely taken away. Students have been dropped into a different type of deep end, one which is no easier, but might in fact become more harmful when they dry off from it in comparison to being better off for having been exposed to the turmoils and busyness of everyday life. Also, whilst these soft skills are most definitely still going to be highly sought after by employers, so too will the ability to use contemporary technology, such as remote working and collaboration tools, yet another skill to consider. So whilst we have some of the ways which Ayoa can be used by neurodivergent students to directly help them with their studies, especially when collaborating with their peers, how can it assist them when it comes to these skills which we are talking about currently? Well, organisation is something that we've already been practicing in this task board, so it makes sense to start there. The whole time, however, we have been in this visual canvas mode, which might be great for visual thinkers, but could be causing a real headache for those who aren't. Neurodiversity is, after all about the variation in each other regarding cognitive functioning that affects learning, thinking, attention, and memory. And this is acknowledged by Ayoa, enabling users to switch the style of their task board whenever they like. Alongside the visual canvas, we also have a more traditional linear list way of working, and we also have a Gantt timeline for those who are very time orientated. You will notice that in every format, exactly the same information is reflected, just in a slightly different way. And what is brilliant about this is that whilst I might now have it open in the canvas mode, that won't dictate that everyone else in the group project has to see it like this. Rachel could have it open in the workflow style, and Louise could have it open in the Gantt timeline, for example, at exactly the same time. As a result, everyone can still collectively work together, yet in a style which is best for them. Now, that flexibility is a massively loved aspect of Ayoa, but we can also assist organisation in other ways too. First of all, in the bottom left of my screen, there is something called the filter bar. And by activating a filter, you will notice that everything else without that variable disappears, instantly condensing our task board so that we only see what is immediately relevant to us. So as you might have guessed, this feature is particularly good for people with ADHD as it reduces distractions. Whilst that feature was shown to be especially helpful for people with ADHD, the personal planner in Ayoa, which I'm now opening, is also a tool which is particularly good for people with autism, but also anyone seeking to better manage their overall workload. The My Planner section of Ayoa is therefore formulated with the category names of now, next, and soon, for the individuals to privately manage their overall workload from across all their different task boards. The structure of now, next, and soon is part of the pictorial exchange communication system, which is often used by people with autism and Asperger's from a young age, so it's familiar to them. Now, whilst all those various ways to organise tasks can be helpful and should improve students' ability to manage their time, this skill can also be bolstered by the fact that they can add as many reminders as they like per task, which they can even choose to receive on their mobile if they download the Ayoa app. And they can do so by going to the very bottom here, and as you can see, they can click to add reminders. I mention that Ayoa app in passing just there, because I will hope you agree with me when I say that Ayoa is a very modern piece of assistive technology, with a fresh interface. And I also hope that you'd agree with me in thinking that it is important that students are exposed to tools and resources which will help them succeed. There are alternative mind mapping pieces of software available, which I'm sure you're aware of, but none quite like Ayoa, which, as I mentioned earlier, is adopted by all sorts of companies which students are going to be seeking to gain employment with after they graduate. That is why we think we are seeing Ayoa growing in popularity and seeing more and more orders via DSA. Simply because whilst it is a piece of assistive software packed full of brilliant reasonable adjustments to assist students with neurological differences, through students' application of it, they are also developing a very valuable skill, that of being able to effectively operate a remote working and collaboration tool. I'm sure you are all aware of the importance of this, considering that an already competitive job market has just become even more fierce. As it stands though, over 30,000 dyslexic graduates leave higher education every year, yet only 2,300 people are helped by access to work in the same period. The question quite simply is then, what happens to them? Well, what that says to me is that there might have been a lost generation after the World Wars. There are concerns that there might be another one in economic terms, but with that many dyslexic graduates effectively either not gaining employment or working, yet in a way which they are not properly supported, every year we are missing out on talent. We want this to change, and by equipping neurodivergent students with extra skills which employers identify with, it only bolsters neurodivergent students' chances of employment. So whilst Ayoa supports students with their studies, thanks to it bringing mind maps and task management together, we are very mindful of the fact that having a neurological difference doesn't stop the moment you graduate. We therefore have made Ayoa a resource which can serve students here and now in the grasp of remote learning and will be with them when they become the professionals of tomorrow, navigating a workplace which we have only had a flavour of in the last year. Ayoa is therefore more than an assistive software aid. Through its adoption and application by students, it becomes a tool which trains them with the skills which they will need in our ever-increasing digital world. The digital landscape, which we are all placed within currently, was built in a rush, simply because it had to be. Yet, this is not necessarily a bad thing if we consider that the social model of disability says that disability is caused by the way society is organised. In fact, it presents us all with an opportunity. This is because the society we are now living in is in no way set in concrete. It is still forming. And if the structure of society determines disability, with a new one in creation, we have the chance to ensure that neurodivergent individuals are not placed at a disadvantage. Thanks to Ayoa's neuro-inclusive design and the DSA scheme, at university, neurodivergent students can be given access to a remote working and collaboration tool which works for them. They will be shown that the future workplace can be organised to be neuro-inclusive by default. They will be given the confidence in themselves to work remotely, and they will become the driving force which will demand that digital workplaces are neuro-inclusive by design. Students place a lot of hopes on higher education, so let's make sure that pride in neurodiversity comes out of it, and they are given the best opportunities to succeed in everything which comes afterwards of them. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to our first presentation. We obviously have many more to take place today, which won't be on Ayoa, but those which our other presenters will be doing. We've got to be mindful that they will be wanting to share their events and presentations too. So we won't be able to take too many questions currently, unfortunately. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email address is rmcgee@ayoa.com, and you'll be able to find that in any email which has been sent prior to today's event, and it'll also be sent in the follow-up email. And as you might have guessed, all disability advisors, needs assessors, assistive technology trainers, etc., are more than welcome to get a free license of Ayoa, so we'll sort that out for you. And to ensure that you can get a more in-depth learning of Ayoa and understand how it can assist students in a variety of ways, so you know everything you need to know about Ayoa. If you think that Ayoa might be a piece of software which can help a student that you're working with, we will be doing follow-up Ayoa assistive software training, which will see you be able to get your license and a training certificate too. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation. And moving on to our next part of today, we've got a treat for you. We're calling it a premiere because this neurodiversity worldwide video, which we're about to share with you, we in fact created specially for this event. Basically, we teamed up with neurodiversity advocates from all across the world to share how neurodiversity is being supported in their countries. Hopefully it will inspire you with the work that you're doing brilliantly here in the UK, and might lead to some new thoughts which could lead to a breakthrough. So it's about 3 to 4 minutes long, but if you'd like to grab a snack, maybe get yourself a drink and just enjoy watching this video which we've made for you here.
Very often people confuse neurodiversity with what would be the concept of being neurodivergent.
The joy of neurodiversity is to actually recognize all these conditions have just simply part of the diversity of the human brain, and to sort of see them in that strength-focused context rather than the deficits.
Getting to work with neurodivergent individuals is something that I absolutely love.
Our mission is to raise awareness on the importance of neurodiversity and to also change the narrative that neurodiversity is a problem into a more comfortable narrative that neurodiversity is a blessing in disguise.
Equality, as you know, equality is a very easy thing to say.
What I would like to see is not tokenism.
Let's say you'd picked any other group of people and you say, well, 80% of them are unemployed and 15% are underemployed. You kind of say, well, that's not equality.
Some schools simply ignore the problem, and the children with this remain without help.
It is where our children occupy a space and also command it.
They've actually changed the whole aspect of how learning is taking place in senior kindergarten. So it used to be sit down with a pencil and we teach you how to hold a pencil. It's all about play learning. So it's very much about, very tactile, very much in terms of how it is that you're going to learn the concepts. It's very much concept based.
We are trying to get people to know neurodiversity from a social point of view. So to stop thinking about deficits and start thinking about differences, neurological differences.
Both neurodiverse and non-neurodiverse persons should learn more about each other by maybe utilizing a continuing education, inclusive but not intrusive.
So everyone fits under the umbrella of neurodiversity, and as I like to say, each living human being with a living brain is under the neurodiversity umbrella, so that leaves zombies out.
And if you've known nothing but neurotypicals in your organization, you're always going to come up with the same solution to the same problems. And it's only when you have a neuro-inclusive environment and that you start coming to other solutions.
And their differences, you should understand that organizations should be able to come together to understand the opportunities and I call it blessing, the advantage that people with neurological differences bring to the organization.
I'd also love to see more organizations doing lots more around neurodiversity, being really proactive in putting in a clear process of support.
A neuro-inclusive workspace is one where there is representation and agency.
We are seeing organizations that support neurodivergent workers. We are seeing groups that particularly have policies to include others.
They should have an economic interest to do that, because if they hire people who are neurodiverse, there is proof, academic proof, that you end up having a more productive workforce, a more creative and innovative workforce.
But to think outside the box, you need people who are outside the box.
My happiness is that I'm one of the voices raising awareness on neurodiversity.
You deserve to be put in a position to succeed and to be supported the way to allow yourself to fulfill your potential at work.
So multiple challenges at no end.
Though the progress is slow, We are definitely headed in the right direction.
It's a lot like the old saying, a lot to do, but more to do.
Even though we have many steps to go, I see a lot of reasons to be optimistic.
Giving individuals some strategies that help them bring their challenges into their control, the impact of that is huge. And I've seen people's confidence grow, their self-esteem improve. I've seen their work performance really improve.
It's hopeful for us as a people, but it's also hopeful for us as a society.
And we're now going to move on to the next presenter, which is Emma Sheekey from Learning Labs, and they've got a brilliant new addition to their Learning Labs software to share with us. So over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Ross. I'll just share my screen now. So hopefully you should all see that. If anyone has any questions throughout my session, please do pop them in the chat or the Q&A and I will get to them at the end. I will be staying on beyond my session, so anything that you have to ask, I'll try and get back to you there, but my contact details will also be shared as well, as will yours, so you can all get free Learning Labs licenses beyond this session. But let's start off by what is Learning Labs. I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about who we are and where we fit into things before I actually get into the product demo. So we are part of a group of companies that work within the DSA and the Access to Work space. So we actually have a assistive technology solutions provider, so providing equipment to students, an AT training provision, and then Learning Labs is part of that as an AT e-learning portal, and that's what I'll be showing you today. And the fourth member of our group is actually our newest, which is Amano, a non-medical help provider. So we're really well versed in supporting students, supporting inclusivity and neurodiversity, and more recently mental wellness, which is the exciting part of the demo which I've got to show you today. So I'm going to head straight into the Learning Labs portal now. So firstly, I will start with Learning Labs as it exists right now. So for anybody that isn't familiar with Learning Labs, it is an e-learning portal with tutorials on assistive technology software. So I'm in it here in the browser because it is browser based. It's compatible with iPads and mobile phones. And because it's just that single login, a user can use it at home, at university when they're eventually allowed back in libraries and so on. So it's really accessible to use in that way, never a need to download anything. And I think that's the way that most software is moving forward today, so we really wanted to keep up with that. This is the workspace where you will be brought to first. As a new user, this will be blank. So for anyone that doesn't already have a Learning Labs account, and you get one today and go into it and think, oh, where is everything? It's because yours will be blank. And that's because you have the ability to add in the tutorials that are relevant to you. So for a student, they won't be recommended all the software that we have in here. So it's not really useful for them to see it. So we've allowed the ability to personalize it in that way. So I have added to my lab suites here some of the newest additions to Learning Labs for you. So we've got Captioned for Windows and Google Chrome, and you're actually going to have a demonstration of this later as well, which is really great. Claro Writing Helper, TalkType, which you'll also see today, and Inspiration 10 for Windows. So those are DSA specific software that we've created tutorials on, but we also work outside that and add in tutorials that we think would support students outside of the DSA as well. So things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, they've become really popular, as you can imagine, throughout the transition to remote learning. So we always welcome any ideas as well that you may have, or anything that you think we are missing. Please do let me know in the comments as well. We've also recently added 2 skills modules. So we have tutorials on career and study skills, and these are also really transferable for anybody using it in the workplace as well. So they're 2 great modules to look at. In terms of how I have added these to my lab suite section, I will show you now. So if you go into the all lab suites page from the side here, and everything is now you can navigate to from this left hand side. So it's really easy to use and really easy to navigate around. You will now see all the software that we have in the portal. So lots that I'm sure you're familiar with. If there's anything that you haven't taken a look at, please do feel free to go in and look at the tutorials for your own professional development. We have a lot of people that do that. We also have a lot of needs assessors that use learning labs to demonstrate software to students because they may not have the latest version on their laptop, or it may not be working at that time. So it's a great handy tool for both students and professionals that use it. So you'll see everything here. And if I click into Ayoa, because we have tutorials on Ayoa, which you've just seen from Ross, you click into it, you can either go straight into it from clicking the name, or I will click the red love heart instead, and that will tag it. So you'll see that that is now tagged. If I head back to the workspace, Ayoa has now been added, and that will stay there until you remove it. So there is that flexibility of adding and removing lab suites as they become relevant. Above that, we have 2 navigation buttons, and now you may think, well, that's really simple, but the idea around it is just for ease of navigation. Again, we appreciate a student probably won't be looking at learning labs daily or even weekly, but when they do need to come in for that support on their AT software, we want them to be able to head back to where they were or go to the next lab that's suggested. And we also have that functionality for the last and the next 10 labs as well. And this is also really useful for any AT trainers or study skills tutors that may be working with a student in learning labs. They could maybe go back and see what the student has looked at previously, and that may help them to form what to support the student with in their sessions. If I go into a lab suite now and show you what one looks like, so I'll go into Ayoa, for example. You'll see you have a program overview and a nice overview video. Just close those down once you have been into them. And then here are all the tutorials below that. So you'll see that Ayoa has lots of functionality. So we've been really in depth here and added lots of tutorials. Some other lab suites may be much shorter if they have less functionality. And you'll see these 3 buttons on the left-hand side here. And these are the different content types for the tutorials. So we have the ability to do, watch and read. And we have these for all pieces of software in the portal, and we have done since we started in 2013. So we're really proud of that. If I go into an interactive do tutorial and show you what that looks like. The idea is for it to be a direct mirror image of the software, but what it has is these prompted instructions. So this is telling me to click on new and it will progress. If I click elsewhere on the page, it won't progress. So it means that the student has to engage with the prompt and follow it through, and they're more likely to remember it if they've actually had to engage with doing it. It also, gives the student an idea of what Ayoa will look like before they even head over into it. So the toolbar is blue at the top, what these buttons are and the shapes of them, things like that. So it becomes more memorable and more easier to use when they come to it. We put a lot of emphasis on our interactive labs. from student feedback, this is, you know, the preferred way of learning, but we do also have additional resources available. So we have our videos. These are short, bite-sized videos with a few options on as well, I thought I'd mention, so you can speed up and slow down the playback rate. Subtitles are standard, pop those on or off. And we also have this other function called picture-in-picture. So this is a bit like if you were on FaceTime and you wanted to navigate to Facebook whilst you were on or something like that. It's the same idea. So you pop out the video into the bottom corner, or you can move it wherever, and then you can navigate to a different page. So for this one, you could be watching starting a mind map whilst actually starting the mind map in Ayoa. And for those that are time conscious and want to get things done quickly, this is a great way to learn and do at the same time. And if I just come out of that, I will show you the last content type, which is our read labs. So really simply bullet pointed instructions. And you can look at the read, watch or do labs independently, or you can look at all three of them and the content will be the same and it will make sense. This opens up in Word Online. It can be downloaded to the desktop version of Word, but we thought to keep it in Word just to make it as accessible as possible, so the student could use the read aloud function or the dictation that's now built into Word. The fourth content type down here is the summary quiz. This is just a 5-question long quiz at the end. The idea around this is just to reaffirm the learning, but I won't go into that in too much detail. It's just a simple quiz at the end. We've also got some functionality buttons on the right-hand side here. So we have the recommended labs button. This is targeted towards, again, any AT trainers that may be working with a student. They could come into the portal and recommend something that the student maybe struggled with or would benefit from looking at again, and they can just recommend it. The bookmark button is for students themselves to bookmark anything to save for later. Both of those can be accessed from the left here. And the final button is the ability to add notes. So in here, you can add your title, add your notes. And if the note is something that you want to set a deadline against, then you can do that. And it will become a notification up here at the top. So there is my deadline note that I have just set. And you can just dismiss all and clear them out if you like. It's worth mentioning that Learning Labs is fully accessible. We also have Recite Me, which is our accessibility software. So again, we're really big on being able to personalize the portal to your specific needs. So for example, I've just changed the text and font, but it will also read it aloud. And it will work with external screen readers and also JAWS and things like that as well. So I know that's really important to mention. So that is Learning Labs as it exists. For the last half of my demonstration, I will be showing you a brand new addition to Learning Labs, which we've been working on for the last year now and we're really excited about, and that is Learning Labs Plus. So if I just head over there now, and as always, my tab is closed when I needed it. There we go. So Learning Labs Plus, what is it? So it's going to be a new area of Learning Labs. So everything that I've just shown you there, the student will still receive, but that will now just live under a new section, AT and skills. So there'll be all the AT tutorials there available for the student to use, but there'll also be a new area, mental wellness. And what this is a mental wellness development tool. So it's not just a content library of PDFs or videos on mental health that are not very specific to the student using it. They may be outdated and they may just be pulled from Google or third-party publishers. We didn't want it to be that. We want it to be a really valuable mental wellness tool. And this is what we've created. So we worked with external partners on this. We worked with NEF Consulting. They have done projects with Mind, the charity, as well as the NHS on mental wellness. So they're really well versed in this area of expertise. So it was great to work with them. And what we've done is we've created a sort of logical process for somebody to work through to hopefully understand and develop their mental wellness. And we started off by creating this new concept called the 6 domains of mental wellness. So this was created by us, which we're really excited about as well. And we're hopefully going to share this, you know, with the wider world, take it into businesses and things like that. And we have broken it down into these 6 areas. So I'll just go through them. We have intellectual, social, spiritual, motivational, emotional, and physical. And then each of those domains is split down into its respective subdomains. So for physical, it will look at exercise, rest, and nutrition. The idea is for you to start by learning about the specific domain. And Learning Labs Plus is broken down into 4 areas, I should mention that. So we have learn, assess, develop, and share. And that's what I'll be going through today. So we'll start with learn and we'll start with the domains. I'm going to go into spiritual. This is the one that often people are slightly confused about. What do we mean by spiritual? The others are quite self-explanatory. Spiritual is broken down into self-esteem and purpose. And I've got the spiritual lab open here. So once you click into that domain lab, it will open up in a separate tab. And what these new domain labs are all the best bits of Learning Labs that I just showed you brought together. So the interactive do functionality, the read, the watch, and the quiz in one blended learning journey for the student to work through. So you've got an overview of what you will learn in this lab. It sets it out beforehand, which we think is really useful. And then we will start the lab, and that becomes a progress bar on the left-hand side. Then you're straight into it. I'm going to scroll through it quite quickly, so you may not be able to read everything, or else we'd be here all day. So I'm just going to go through it and show you some of the key features. So when I said a blended learning journey, you'll see a few of those elements throughout. So we've got the text to read, we've got videos to watch, we've got the little tasks to do, and then there's a quiz at the end. But what I wanted to show you is that engagement again. So we're at a little task here, and I say task very loosely. A lot of them are just click-throughs, so really simple and easy to use. But you have to click through them to progress. You can't get to the next lot of content until you click. So I'll just do that. And you'll see that that's now available to continue. So again, it prevents a student just scrolling through it, not taking in the information. And then again, the same for this one. And I can continue. I just want to come down to the end now and show you what it looks like once you've worked through this. And then you get to the quiz at the end. So you'll work through the quiz. It will not give you a score or anything like that. It's not something that you have to pass or fail. And you'll see that throughout the portal as well, that it will never label you as having good or bad mental wellness. And it's also not a diagnostic tool. So it will never say, okay, you scored 4 out of 6 on this. You have anxiety, you have depression. It will never ever say anything like that. It's meant to be a very non-judgmental platform that just gives you an indication of your mental wellness. So once you've worked through the quiz, it will take you back to the workspace. And the idea is that you have now got a better understanding of that domain. So now it's time to assess yourself against that. So we're in the assess section now. We've got a little general mood emoji board there, and then the individual assessments below. Like I just said, we've got these very non-judgmental bars rather than it being a percentage or a score or any labels or anything like that. I'm going to go into the spiritual wellness assessment. And you'll see that that's opened up. It's just 4 questions long. Again, these questions were developed with the external consultants. So they are really valuable to assess somebody against that domain. Sorry, a bit of a tickly throat there. But there's actually two different outcomes from how you answer the assessment and where it will navigate you to. So I'm going to show you that. If I answer all of these on the higher end of the scales, I'm somewhat satisfied with my mental wellness in the spiritual domain today and submit those. It's taken me back to the wellness workspace, and we will have a pop-up that will explain all of this. That's the last part of development. I should have mentioned at the start, this will be live from the 8th of March. So even though you're on today, you will all still get the upgrade because it will just happen in the background. But the pop-up will explain that you have assessed quite highly in that specific domain, so there's no need to take any interventions today in that specific domain, but maybe why not look at something else that you might be struggling with, you may be a little bit lower in. If I instead go back and answer on the lower end of the scales, so not very satisfied with my mental wellness in spiritual today, and submit my answers, it has instead taken me to the spiritual wellness lab suite. And this is the exact same idea as when we were in the Ayoa lab suite. So it's, whereas that was software with tutorials on how to use it, this is the spiritual domain, and this is tutorials on how to improve in it. So it's the same idea, but this just focuses on mental wellness. You can navigate to all the places you've already been from this page as well. You can go back and do the domain lab again that we started with. You can take your assessment as many times as possible. Or if you see the domain explorer, click into it, and you can navigate to a different domain if you want. If I scroll down now and show you the actual tutorials, we also call them interventions. You may hear us call them that as well. They all live here, and they're split down into the two subdomains that I mentioned earlier, so self-esteem and purpose. And then you can click into them. So I've got one open up here. This is the ways to help others. So it's very much in the same style as the domain lab, this new style that we're working with, this blended learning. But what you'll see is it's a lot shorter. So if I start the lab and I come into it, pictures, text, but then we've also created these very short and very simple videos, but we think it's a very effective way to get across the message and make them quite memorable. So I'll play this one for you. It's just over a minute long, so nothing too lengthy. There we go, nice and short, but we think the information is still really valuable, and it's a nice way to show the content rather than it just being a long list that could be quite unengaging. If I come down now, you'll see there's another just click through, and then that is that lab complete. So a lot shorter in length, and that's because the idea is for the student to work through a few of these at a time, so we didn't want them to be too lengthy or become overwhelming. The same functionality is present as it is in the AT section. So we have the recommend button, we have the bookmarked button, and we also have the notes section. But what you'll notice in the notes section here is there is an addition to it, My Mentors Notes. And that's because with Learning Labs Plus, we have added in the ability for a mentor to collaborate with the student and see what their mental wellness is looking like and that sort of thing. So I'll show you that now. And that's the fourth area of the portal. Excuse me. So from the left-hand toolbar here, I will go into the Mentor Hub and we'll just let that load. And this is what it looks like. So from here, you can invite a mentor and we say mentor, but this could be an AT trainer, a disability advisor, a mental health mentor. It could even be a parent or a friend. As long as they consent and they accept, then you can go ahead and collaborate within the portal. So it's a really simple invite form here that will get sent to their email. Once it is sent, it will move to pending, and this is where any invites that haven't been accepted or declined will live. You can nudge that person if they haven't responded, but you'll see that once I've clicked it, it's now grayed out, and that is because you can only nudge somebody once every 24 hours, just to avoid anybody spamming anyone if they haven't accepted. If they do accept, they move to active, that's great. If they decline, they move to declined, and the reason is given there. So that's what it looks like from a student's side or a user's. I will show you now what it looks like from a mentor's perspective. So I'll just log in. I hope you all don't mind that my test account is very Harry Potter themed. But this is what it looks like for a mentor. So a mentor can still have a learner account and they can log into it there. Any pending invites will be here, accept or decline if you choose. Declined will move to the right, but any active learners will be here on the left. And you can have more than one learner as a mentor, so the list would just go below here. And then you can go into it and view that learner. So you know which learner you are in because it says at the top, you are in Ron Weasley's learner account at the minute. You can see their AT progression. So you can see what labs they've engaged with the engagement dashboard, what they've last looked at. So that's really useful for the AT side of things. But you can also look at what they have been doing in the wellness workspace. So you can come down, you can see their assessments, but what you'll notice is you can't click into them. So a mentor can't do any of the assessments or the interventions on behalf of the student. It's the same if I go into the spiritual wellness lab where we have just been, you'll see that these are grayed out. But what it does show you is an indication of what that student's looked at. Like technical glitch. There we go, I'm back. You can recommend a lab or you can add notes and the student will then see that in their profile. So it's really easy to collaborate. So that is everything for Learning Labs and Learning Labs Plus. I'm aware that I'm just on time. So the last thing I'll mention is that all DSA students will get this update from now on moving forward, and it will be live on the 8th of March. Provide site licenses to universities and workplace, and we have 3 different options available for that. So we have the AT section as a standalone package, the mental wellness section as a standalone package, and also a bundle of both of them as well. And if anybody would like any more information on those, please do drop me an email and we can discuss it further. But that is everything. I'll hand back over to Ross now, and if there's any questions, I'll get back to them in the chat. Thanks everyone for having me today.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was really, really interesting seeing a demonstration of the new Mental Wellness Hub. Mental wellness is so important. Next up, we have Sam Marsden, and she'll be discussing her journey to becoming an author. During this session, there will be a Q&A, but this will run a little differently from the Q&A we have currently going on. So basically, if you have a question you would like to ask Sam, please raise your hand. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there'll be an option to raise your hand. And we will unmute you so you can ask your question directly to Sam, so she can answer that way. Sam, you ready to present?
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me today. I'm happy to be here. I'll probably talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll open it up to questions for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll finish up by 11 o'clock. So I'm an author with dyslexia, and I thought I'd tell you about my journey from the very start, from when I was a child, and how I kind of got here and how I had to overcome a lot of demons, which I still have to overcome today. So yeah, I was diagnosed when, no, not officially diagnosed. It was suspected when I was about 7, and everyone was able to kind of start being able to read, and I was being given extra help at school, but no matter how much they helped me, I still couldn't really read or do the alphabet or any of those things. And I kind of kept it as a secret, like it was really embarrassing to me. So I kind of tried to hide it or copy friends. And I carried on like that until I was about 14. And I was officially diagnosed with dyslexia when I started secondary school. So I think I was about 11 or 12 when they gave me a needs assessment or whatever they do. And then again, just before my GCSEs started at age 14, so that I could get extra time for exams and all the rest of it. But I still couldn't really read or write. And I was hiding that, and I was so embarrassed in front of teachers and my friends. And then I had this gorgeous English teacher called Miss Spencer, and I met her when I was in year 9. I was about 13, 14, and she took me aside and said, "Sam, we need to teach you how to learn to read and write." And I was like, I can't, everybody's tried and everybody fails, and I'm just never going to be able to, and it's okay, I'll just have a job where I don't read or write. And she was like, no, we can do this for you. And anyway, she kept me behind school every Tuesday and Thursday for about an hour and a half, and we were struggling to help me. And then she started doing drama with me because she knew I loved theatre, she knew I loved improvisation, and she started saying, well, okay, I'm going to tell you a scene from this book that we're working on. It was To Kill a Mockingbird. And she said, you know, in this scene we have Atticus Finch and who's the girl? Is it Harper? I can't remember. No, that's the author. I can't remember their names. And she was like, let's just act this scene out, and I'm going to give you the character motives, and let's do an improvisation together. And I was like, yeah. And we started acting this book out and the scenes, and I fell in love with literature. And I was like, To Kill a Mockingbird is amazing. I love literature. And I started learning how to read with her, and I started writing my own stories. And I showed some of them to her, and she was like, you're an amazing storyteller. And she said something to me that I've just remembered forever. Don't let words get in the way of your writing. And that's just really stuck with me. And she said that it was the ideas that are important and the characters that are important, and they matter more than the words. So that kind of stuck with me, and I carried on. I mean, I still didn't do well. I got a D in English at GCSE level, even though I worked really, really, really hard to try and get a C. And I did then retake English after I left secondary school, and I got a D again. And then I was determined to go to drama school, and you had to have a C in English to go to drama school. So I retook it again a third time. I must have been about 19 by then. And I got my C. I scraped my C. And I did end up going to drama school when I was about 20 in London, to Central School of Speech and Drama. And I had a needs assessment there for dyslexia because there was opportunities to be given equipment, mind mapping equipment actually, which really helped me, and free laptop and extra additional help. And it was the Central School of Speech and Drama I went to, and the needs assessor that I had there when I was about 20, she was just fantastic. Like, she sat me down and did loads and loads of tests, but afterwards she took the time to explain to me what those tests meant, and she took the time to explain to me that I wasn't stupid, which really meant a lot, because I would get really insecure about those tests and be like, oh my goodness, they're going to see the truth, they're going to see how I can't spell, I can't read, how I'm really stupid, how I shouldn't even be at this drama school. And it was quite insecure place for me to sit there with a needs assessor. I don't think I had a great experience with a needs assessor at secondary school, actually. I think she made me feel quite dumb. But this one at Central, she made me feel good, and she showed me how the graph was zigzaggy and how some things I'm really good at and some things I'm not. And it just made me feel good that maybe I am good at some things. And then I got quite interested in dyslexia, and I found Steven Spielberg, some of the things he said really inspiring. And then I found out Agatha Christie had dyslexia, and I was like, what? She's the best-selling author of all time. And I was really into acting and everything, but I would be rewriting the scripts in my spare time. And I became a drama teacher for 10 years in London, freelancing. And I'd always get, the scripts in. And they just often weren't that fun for the kids to perform. The characters were a bit dull, and so I would rewrite like the scripts for them, which is really fun. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I thought, no, that's one step too far. I can't do that. But yeah, about 5 years ago, I thought I'm just gonna try it. So I started writing fiction, and I really, really, really loved it. I really loved writing stories. I mean, I use a software called Scrivener to help draft my novels, and every other word is spelt wrong, but there's word processors now, and you can go over it and you can fix things up. And luckily I have a husband who will just proofread I often will use the wrong word, even though it's been spelt check. It will be the wrong one. So yeah, and I put that on Wattpad, which is like a sharing story platform, and it went viral really, really quickly. In about 4 or 5 months, it got 350,000 views, and the teenagers were going crazy. It was a novel called Underglass. And then through that novel, I got pick of any literary agent I wanted. I had offers in the US and offers in the UK. And I chose to go with a literary agent in New York, who represent lots of young adult books that I really respect, like the Divergent series. And then it got optioned for film and TV really quickly. So that's really exciting. But interestingly, the book didn't come out. English publisher didn't buy the book, sadly. It sold to a Czech publisher, and it sold to a publisher in Russia, and it's still on submission to English publishers. But I don't know if that's gonna, I don't know if it's gonna happen. And I have to be honest, sometimes I question, is it because I'm dyslexic? And my prose is, it's simple. Like, it's not as sophisticated and beautiful as possibly other writers. So that's something I have to work on. But I know the story's good, and I've been told that. And the guy in Hollywood who bought it, he was Greg Silverman. He was head of Warner Brothers for 3 years between 2013 and 2016. So he did Interstellar, Inception, Hangover, Wonder Woman, and he's like, structurally, and this is fantastic. And so structurally, I know I can do it. Story-wise, I know I can do it. Character-wise, I know I can do it, but it's just mastering those prose. And then I also wrote another book, 100 Acting Exercises for 8 to 18-year-olds, which was published by Bloomsbury in the UK. So that's really cool, because that's a good publisher. And that was acting exercises I had developed to help kids with drama and confidence and reading, actually. And I really passionately believe that drama can help kids with dyslexia. And I've taught many kids with dyslexia in the drama classroom, and I see it's finally something they're good at, because it's good for people who are good at storytelling. People with dyslexia are often good at problem solving. They're often good at getting themselves out of tricky situations. And there are so many drama games and improvisations and things that you can do with children through drama that can help them with literacy. I can't say, you can tell I'm dyslexic. I can't say words all the time, that help them with their literacy. And yeah, so I wrote that book, 100 Acting Exercises for 8 to 18-year-olds, particularly for kids that struggle with academia. And I have a lot of English teachers who use that book, and a lot of drama teachers who use that book, and parents. You can buy that book on Amazon or wherever you like. And I do recommend using drama to help. And I think, yeah, that's about it of my story. Oh, and I have a website where I put together, it's www.marstonsam.com, and I put together some resources on there for students that want to be a writer, and it's like a 4-week email course that they can sign up to, and I just talk a bit about my journey and techniques that I use to help me overcome my like insecure demons. And one of those tips is just write without thinking. Don't stop to do the spelling and stuff when you're creating, because the two sides of the brain will just argue and you'll melt. So I find that it's best just to create, do your story, and then on a completely separate day, preferably a separate week, you come back and edit and go, oh my goodness, the spelling and the grammar's awful, but you just sit through it and you fix it. But don't try and create and edit at the same time, I think, especially if you have dyslexia, because it won't end happily. So that's one of my tips. Yeah, all right, I'll open it up to questions now to you. Oh, I think Louise said if you press the raise hand yellow button, then she'll open you up and I'll see you.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll have a few options. One of those will be raise hand. When you do that, I'll be able to see that you've raised your hand. And I will be able to unmute you so you can ask your question. So yes, if you have any questions, please do that now. Yep, we have one from Joe.
Hi Sam, that was a really inspiring tale. I just wanted to ask, do you use any, when you're thinking about stories, how do you plot them? Do you use post-it notes on a wall? You know, do you use visual, colour, that sort of thing? I just was curious about that element.
Yeah, so having dyslexia, I can be really unorganized. And that is something I would like to improve on. So, I mean, just when you're starting out with an idea for a novel, just so much material will just like come to me, just non-stop. And I tend to scribble it all down just with a pen and a notebook, and I scribble all these many ideas down, and that will probably last for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then I use something called, I've made my own beat sheet. So in Hollywood they have something called a beat sheet, and it's where you divide the story into acts, so like 3 acts. And then within those acts, you have events like an inciting incident. So in The Wizard of Oz, the inciting incident is when the tornado comes and takes Dorothy's house and she ends up in Kansas. And you have all these plot points. So I'll get all my ideas and then I'll put them into the beat sheets so that they're structured. But no, I don't use colors or anything much more sophisticated than that. And then after it's in my beat sheet, I put it on a piece of software called Scrivener, which is writing software. And I'll divide my novel into about 30 chapters, 3 acts, 10 chapters per act. And then I find just dealing with little bits at a time really helps. So if you look at the whole Scrivener document, and I mean, a novel is normally about 80 to 100,000 words, that's overwhelming. But a chapter is about 2,000 to 3,000 words. So that's less scary for me. So just going, okay, I'm just dealing with this chapter today, 2,000 to 3,000 words, and I can handle that.
Thank you. We had a few hands up, but they've disappeared. So if you have a question, can you raise your hands again, please? Oh, just had one from Tanya. Just trying to find you in the list, because we have quite a few attendees.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi, Sam. Can you tell us about your actor training? Was there anything that really worked for you as a student at Central, or some things that might have got in the way that would have been more useful to you as a dyslexic learner?
Yeah, so I went to Central only for a year. It was meant to be a 3-year course, but it didn't feel quite right for me, so I ended up going for a year, and I graduated with a higher certificate national diploma. And then I ended up going to university for 3 years to study sociology and international development studies, which is funny enough, it was way more academic. But I really thrived and loved that. And I ended up getting a first, by the way, despite failing all my GCSEs almost. I got a first at university, which is kind of crazy. I had a great tutor there who was like, don't let your dyslexia get in the way. It's the ideas that matter. But yeah, Central. What was useful at Central? The thing is, I had really good youth theatres and really good drama groups when I was a teenager. And I found a lot of those things really useful for my confidence and everything. But at Central, it was like a lot of the same of what I'd kind of done as a teenager. But the needs assessor was really useful. Oh, and I had they gave me a free laptop and everything, and they gave me mind mapping, which was really useful. And another thing I found quite useful was the coloured sheets they gave me for reading. They were useful. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just interested about the training, say, if what did work for you in the actor training, how useful, how inclusive did you find it?
So, I mean, I love like the classic stuff when it comes to actor training. So I'm really fascinated by Stanislavski and what he has to say about given circumstances and motives and all of that. And I definitely use that in my writing now. I really like how he looks at kind of in-depth character stuff. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Oh, I know what really helped actually. So we did Meisner, and he's another fantastic practitioner, and it's really about just getting rid of those blocks. So just kind of following your intuition. And when you get the voice in your head going, you can't do that, or stop, you're going to look stupid, or and you kind of clam up, but it kind of teaches you just to jump beyond those things, and that really helped.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have Jao with a question. So sorry if I've mispronounced your name.
No, that's it. Thank you. Hi, Sam. Yeah, so I also have a little bit of experience writing. I did a creative writing MA, and I also have a disability too. So I find it really interesting, your whole story, getting published and everything. So you mentioned that you popped your story online and it sort of went viral. So what was that you used?
So it was called Wattpad. WATTPAD. It's primarily a platform for teenagers, and my book was aimed at young adults, so it was the perfect platform for my story. Yeah, and it's really, it gave me a lot of confidence being on there, because I could see the teenagers were really enjoying the story. They comment throughout the whole book, and I mean, this book got thousands of comments where people would be going, whoa, I love this character, or whoa, I can't believe you had this twist, and whoa, I wasn't expecting that. So it really, really helped my confidence. And it was a great place for learning and interacting with readers. I wouldn't recommend it.
Disability in that one? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you want to get published, because some of the English publishers, like the British publishers, said they couldn't publish the book because it had been published on Wattpad.
Right.
So in a way, my agent says that if I didn't put it on Wattpad, it would be published by now in England by or the US by a publisher. So I would go on Wattpad if you want to interact and have fun, but not if your aim is to get published by a traditional publisher.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Next up, we have Ash Phipps.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My question is regarding dictation. Have you ever tried to dictate or use any kind of dictation software when writing, you know, to keep your flow and not worry about the words, as you say, because that really resonated with me. I'm a one-to-one support tutor, and I work with I have a couple of creative writing students at the moment that I'm supporting. And one of the things we are looking at is how to keep that flow going and not interrupt it with thinking about words, as you quite rightly pointed out. And I just wondered if you thought that dictation was a good option, and whether or not you think Scrivener should be something that is recommended as an assistive technology for creative writing students.
Yeah. So I'll do the really easy, quick one first. Scrivener, should it be recommended to creative writing students? Absolutely, yes. It's fantastic. And I have a lot of professional writers now who are friends from the agency and people I know. We all use Scrivener. Yeah, I recommend that. And diction software. So I really want it to work, but it just doesn't quite. I tried Dragon on my phone about a year or a year and a half ago, and that was pretty hopeless because it couldn't recognize my voice properly, and there was too many mistakes. And then I used just on Word, they had one that it just popped up about 6 months ago, and it was like, do you want to try diction? And I was like, oh yeah. And it was the best one I'd used so far, and it did work. And I did write about 2 chapters. I've just finished a new book. And I wrote about 2 chapters on the diction thing, and I was like, this is fantastic, this is how I'm going to write forevermore, and I was really happy. But then I read it back and it just wasn't as good as when I type, and I don't know why. So I've gone back to typing again, and I don't know if that's just me or what, but it's really good for like rough. I think using diction software is good for really, really rough drafts and just to get the ideas out. But there's going to be a lot of rewriting and polishing if you use the diction app, I think.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you to answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Next up, we have another question. Unfortunately, due to a Zoom error, you've come up as anonymous, so I haven't got your name. Just sent you a request to unmute, so hopefully you've seen that.
Yeah, my name's Lenora, by the way.
Hello, sorry about that. I don't know why we've had that error. Thank you for your question.
Sam, very inspiring and interesting story. What I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned about the impact that your initial inspiring teacher had in getting you to act out the book you were reading. And that you were using that technique with students of your own who were dyslexic, and the impact that was having on their ability to grasp and then move on from the. So I just wanted to find out if you had yourself done any research or looked into the kinesthetic learning aspect of that, and how that was enabling yourself or your students to interact with written text.
Yeah, I have done no research on it, but I know it works. And although I haven't done research on it, I can tell from a personal experience that when you can't read and you can't join in with the rest of the class because you can't really read the novel they're working on, you think it's not just your reading ability, you think it's everything. But I did anyway. I was like, I'm just stupid at everything. And it taught me that no, I'm not. I can grasp the complex issues in this novel. I can grasp some of the important stuff in this book that actually other people in my class couldn't. And so I think it's just giving that confidence. And yeah, and then I would do that with kids when I taught as well, and I saw them surprise themselves, that they weren't as daft as they thought they were, and that actually they were smart. And just seeing them have that realization is lovely.
Thank you. Approximately how long do you think it took from the sort of initial let's act this out to we can actually sit and write this? What sort of time span or role, or does it depend on the material under discussion?
Oh, I'm not sure if I totally understand the question. So I mean, with my students, I was just teaching them drama. I wasn't teaching them English. I was a teacher doing youth theatres, after school clubs, coming into schools to direct their school plays. So I would never be sitting down with them with pens and paper. It was always a very physical kind of learning that I did with the kids, kind of bums off chairs and off we go type thing. But I know I did have parents say to me, come up to me and say, oh wow, my kids' confidence is improving in their English class or at school or in their academic abilities because the drama class has taught them that they can do stuff.
Oh right, so that it was more a case of confidence.
I think so, yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Next up, we've got Tanya. Have you got another question, Tanya? Maybe not. Maybe that's an error.
No, it's an error. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. Don't worry.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry. We do have one more question from Megan Sylvester.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sam. Great to hear your story. From your experience as a student, what would you suggest in terms of writing strategy for students when writing essays, so in comparison to creative writing?
Yeah. So when I first started at university to do my degree in sociology and international development studies, I was like getting 2 2s and failing sometimes, and it was a state. It was an absolute mess, and I was like, I'm gonna have to leave. And again, another inspirational teacher came along called Alan, and he took me aside and he was like, let me help you. And he spent a lot of time with me helping me how to write an essay, and I learned, and by my 3rd year I was getting straight firsts. And he actually just wrote like a template for me out at one point. He was like, look, I think it's like, just completely simplify it, but like, kind of some people think, other people think, I think type structure. And the connections, that's where I was struggling. So I'd often be jumping all over the place in the essay. And he was like, we need to work on the connections here. So yeah, that really helped. And a book really helped me, actually. It was called How to Get a First. And it was just a book that I bought, but it really, really spoke to me because he really broke down kind of how to write an essay and to structure an essay. So it was definitely something I had to learn, and I was not naturally good at that.
That's great, thank you. Really helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you, Meg. Does anybody else have any questions? No, I think that might be it. So,
okay, cool.
Thank you so much. I will pass you on to Ross.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Thank you, Sam. That was absolutely brilliant. I think everyone wants to be a storyteller in their own right. Such a brilliant quality to have. And like you say, people who are neurodivergent or dyslexic, they have that fantastic ability, sort of like built-in ability to tell stories. So hearing firsthand from you was excellent. Thank you so much. And if we do have any other questions from panelists or attendees, I'll maybe get them across to you via email so they can stay in touch.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sam. We're now going to move on to our next talker today, who is the wonderful Rosie Jones, stand-up comedian who you might have seen on TV shows like Mock the Week, 8 out of 10 Cats also. And for this part of the session, Rosie has asked if we can upgrade some of you to panelists, which means that you'll be able to unmute yourself and also turn your camera on. So don't be alarmed if in the next minute or so it looks like you're going to leave the Zoom room and come back into the Zoom room. It's just all done automatically, but once you come back in, you'll be able to unmute yourself and also turn your camera on. It just means that we'll have a bit more of a atmosphere for when Rosie's doing her stand-up comedy, and we can all see everyone enjoying what is about to take part. So Louise and myself are just going to promote a few of you to panelists, and if you are, please turn your camera on and your microphone, and I'll hand over to Rosie now. Thank you very much.
Hello. Oh, this is lovely. I must say it's a bit weird to do comedy at 11 AM. Normally it's 10 PM, everyone's drunk and everyone's about to get Larry. So if you want to get Larry, feel free. And I am drinking a vodka to get us in the mood. Laura said we can get drunk. Yes, you can. Hello, I am Rosie, and I am a triple threat. I am disabled, I am gay, and I am a prick. Oh, the BBC love me. Oh, I should say, I'll try not to, but I might swear a little bit. So if there's children around you, show them it. They need to learn. What I need to get this out there. My voice, because this is what you sound like on Zoom. Your internet is shit. All for the year I've had, Rosie, I think your internet's no. This is my voice all of the time. So you got to either get on board or fuck up. As you can see from my background, it is currently going well. For my mum and dad. I normally live in London, but
it's 11:01. No, 11 AM one.
Yeah.
Have you got?
One day, shut the fuck up. Every lockdown we have, I shit myself and I come back to my mum and dad's house because I am not a grown up and I cannot look after myself. You can tell it's my parents' house because of that. So if you can't see, that is a glass cabinet full of glasses, none of which they ever use.
Around.
Never, because they are the fancy glasses. We have never ever in my 30 years had an occasion fancy enough for the fancy glasses. all the pieces, all my glasses in my flat are all individual pieces and they are all stolen from the local pub. It's what you do. So I feel like I need to address the disabled elephant on the Zoom.
Oh.
That's what my mum calls me. I have a disability called cerebral palsy, and I guess the worst thing about having cerebral palsy is how long it takes me to say cerebral palsy. Blind. That. Why did I get one syllable? For Ursula, the slow talkers, we get 5 bloody syllables. It's not fair. And then, if we're being really medical, I have what's called a taxi. Cerebral palsy. Now, the taxi word is very important because it means in the disabled world, I am a big deal. But you already knew that. Because actually 90% of people with CP. However, they have what's called spastic cerebral palsy. Yeah. I said that word. Can we just all unclench our assholes? Just release. Release. It's okay because it's not a bad word. It's a medical word to describe someone with a high muscle tone. So they're very tight. So they're great at doing a robot. Me, not so much. Because I forgot the exact opposite, and I forgot low muscle tone. So I'm very floppy. I'm like a rag doll, but sexy. So I went to school with, I think the proper term for them are twats. Who used to call me spastic. And I'd say to them, no, that is medically incorrect. I could not be any less spastic. That's my problem. If I was a little bit more spastic, I'd be fine. If anything, you're more spastic than I am. You lucky bastard. But apart from that, being disabled is amazing because you can dribble on people. Oh, I can't help it. I can. I can. And I do find that a lot of people are awkward around me. And I really feel like it's my job to make it more awkward. So people say to me, oh, Rosie, what's your disability? And I go, I am not disabled. I'm an alcoholic. Which is half true. There are negative points of being disabled, but I feel like growing up, my mum and dad were great, and they would say to me, Rosie, you be whoever you want to be, apart from a hairdresser. Or a brain surgeon. Or an optician.
Surgeon.
Or a train announcer. The train coming in to platform 2 is the 14:22.
Wicked.
No.
Wicked.
It's already gone. Yeah. But it's all okay now because I finally found the perfect job for me. I get to work for 10 minutes a day, tops. I get to talk about my favourite ever subject, me. And I normally get a shout out of it. Which you can't really do on Zoom. So the pro of gigging from Zoom is I now only get dressed from the waist up. It's lovely. Oh, this has been so lovely. I've been Rosie. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much to Rosie. I think that's all cheered us up for the next for the rest of the day, really. It's great to have some comedy from Rosie there. We'll be moving on to the rest of our presentations now, but if you want to go back and watch that, we'll obviously be sending a recording and you can share it with your friends and family who might like to take a watch of that also. We're going to be moving on to Caption Ed next, who will be our next presenters sharing their piece of assistive technology. And I think it's going to be Ed McCann who's going to be talking to us first, and he's a bit of a comedian in his own right. He's got a tough, yeah. Well, you've got a tough act to follow, Ed, but I'll hand over to you now if you'd like to share your screen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Now you've made everybody think that I'm going to make everybody laugh. Unfortunately, yeah, now I have to follow that. So I apologize. Oh, also, it seems to be, it looks very sunny outside and I've turned into a silhouette. But that actually, yeah, that'll be, it's actually probably better. Oh, there you go. Oh dear. Yeah, you see the silhouette was better. So I'll jump into my desktop and we'll go through, I'll go through captioned review. So I'll do like a brief overview of captions. And then, and then we'll switch over to Rich. So sort of like a brief overview of caption. I'll go through, so I know some of you may have seen this already. Some of you may have seen the browser version. Some of you may have seen the desktop version that we brought out late last year, but I'll be showing you both today, and I'll make sure I keep the time. And I'll go ahead and let's open up this presentation. So as you can see, the software is called Captioned. It is, of course, a captioning software, or as you can also see, it's also called Caption Ed, which is great. It was definitely named after me. Rich is going to kill me. And it gives me really good job security as well, until they find a guy called Caption, and then I'm totally screwed. But yeah, so a little bit about Captioned, why it came about. Obviously, a lot of you may also know me from Medical, or know us from Medical, and that's kind of why we built it. So we were contacted a couple of years ago now by the University of Kent about them looking for a captioning solution that could work cross-platform, so it would work everywhere, so on a student's computer, on a student's browser, and so on. And the main issues that they were facing was obviously the main thing was the fact that a lot of the captioning solutions don't understand complex lexicon, and that's sort of where we came in from the Medical point of view. Just a little caveat actually on Captioned. So we brought it out last year. It was extremely popular. I mean, I absolutely love it. I know it might seem like I'm paid to say that, but trust me, I absolutely love it. And for those of you who already used it, we've had some fantastic feedback, and it was very, very popular. When we first brought it out, it was fantastic. We were really blown away by the positivity around it. But then we started to get some feedback that it was starting to get rejected for a couple of things. So we spoke to SFE about it, and we've brought out some new models. So now we have an unlimited version for SFE students. And at the moment, SFE will allow it for students with hearing impairments, for captioning online material that is not the university's remit, and for captioning solely. But a student will have both the browser version and the desktop version, which I'll show you, and that's only for SFE students. So for SAS, SFW, and SFNI, this can be used for any student that needs captioning. So yeah, so I'll jump into it, and I'll go through a demo. I'll sort of show you kind of how it works. I'll show you just very briefly how it works in this presentation, and then I'll jump straight into the live demo. So this is what the browser version looks like, and this is the one that if some of you've got a license or got a license early on, this is the one that you will have seen. I apologize if this makes you feel a little seasick, but I did, as we all have, we've all had a lot of time through lockdown to 3D model things apparently. So I had a lot of time to 3D model stuff. So I had to make it move around. So I apologize if you do get seasick, then turn away and I'll let you know when it's safe to turn back. But this is the user interface that we have, and we try to make it as simple for students to use as possible. My personal background is I was an AT trainer for 8 years before I came over to this side, and I know that students can sometimes be massively overwhelmed by the amount of software that they have. And especially if they're just about to jump into a lecture, for example, and maybe they don't have a lot of time to set up a load of settings. So we try to make this as simple as possible for a student to use through the browser. So they have a few different options. They can change the theme, the font size, and also the subject matter. So the subject matter, they can choose between different languages. So things like French, Spanish, German, and it will also understand complex lexicon. So it will cover all of the STEM subjects as well. But I'll show you more of that actually in the demo. So this is what it will look like, the browser version in particular, and I'll also show you the desktop version at the end too. You just open up your browser and this will work in Chrome and Edge. So it will work on Mac, Windows, and Chromebook. And a student can just navigate to whatever media they want. So whether it's a lecture, a video they found on YouTube, Netflix, whatever they want. Hopefully something educational, and they can just go ahead and flick up into the corner and they'll see their nice little captioned extension, and you'll see this in the live demo too. And it's just a matter of going up to the top, clicking onto that button, and it will open up their nice little user interface. They can go through, choose their theme, choose their font size, and then most importantly, choose their subject matter, whatever it is that they want to choose. So for this case, I'll just randomly choose British English, which is probably the main one that students will be using, unless they're doing something with complex lexicon. And then when they click start, So as the media starts to play, it will then open up a little captioning window down the bottom, and it will start to caption as the media starts to play. So you'll see that there's no lag between the speaker speaking and the captions appearing on screen. Now, as I did mention, there are some different themes, so you can kind of see, and I will go through the different themes actually in the demo itself. But just so you can see, there are a couple of buttons down the bottom. So there's an auto scroll on and off. So this is really good for students who maybe miss something and want to scroll back up, or if the student wants to have this off all the time, they can turn auto scroll off and they could just be following it through at their own pace. So if a student is hearing impaired, for example, they could just follow the captions through at their own pace rather than it auto scrolling. And then the other button down the bottom left is the download button. And this is where you can then download the full transcript of all of the captions that have been captioned during that lecture, meeting, podcast, radio show, whatever media it is that they've been watching. And this will work live. So this will work on live media. So whether it's a Zoom meeting, whether it's on MS Teams, Google Meet, or pre-recorded stuff as well. So anything that is playing through their computer will be able to caption. So I'll jump straight into the actual demo so I don't take up too much time. And I'll show you the browser version first, and then I'll jump into the desktop version. And I'll try and keep on time because I do love the sound of my own voice. So even though Ross was very kind to say I was funny, I'm really not. I'll show you actually, because we're short on time, I'll show you it working with, so I do have like quite a few different videos that I use it with. And obviously, if you want to contact me at the end and want a demo copy, I'll send you them out. You can test it out for yourself, put it through its paces. But I'll show you working with a couple of videos that sort of show off its full capability. So I usually use like Kent's Panopto to sort of show how it will work with like Panopto, Echo 360, Blackboard Collaborate and the like. But I'll skip over this video and I'll jump straight into a medical video. So here I have an osmosis open. This video is about hyperaldosteronism. I can finally say that. I'm not a doctor like Rich, so I can't pronounce most of the stuff, but I just want to show you how it will deal when it comes to complex lexicon. So if I go up to the top, all I do in my browser is, if the lecture's about to start or I'm about to start playing the video, I can go up to the top here and you'll see my nice little captioned extension. I can then go ahead and choose a theme. So I'm going to go with sort of like a darker theme. I can change my font size so I can go larger. And then most importantly, I can choose my subject matter. So because this is about sort of medical based, based jargon, I'm going to go with health and life science for this. And it's that simple. All I do now is just go ahead and click start. Down the bottom, it opens up my captioning window, and I can move this around, so I can click and drag and move this around as I want. I can also resize this if I need, and then pop it wherever I wish. And then as the media starts to play or the live lecture starts to go, I can go ahead and play this back. And you'll see it captioned live.
Hyperaldosteronism refers to an endocrine disorder where the adrenal gland produces above normal levels of the hormone aldosterone. Now, there are two adrenal glands, one above each kidney. And each one has an inner layer called the medulla and an outer layer called the cortex, which is subdivided into three more layers: the zona glomerulosa, the zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. The outermost layer is the zona glomerulosa, and it's full of cells that make the hormone aldosterone. Aldosterone is part of a hormone family, or axis, which work together and are called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Together, these hormones decrease potassium levels.
So you'll kind of get an idea there of how it will deal with, it's almost immediate, the captions will appear. So it'll all be based on our servers and then pushes it straight back very, very rapidly. Something cool that you might want to share with people is that the window that it's currently captioning will have a little blue marker next to it. So I can actually have it playing.
Increase sodium levels.
And then I can actually mute the audio, so I now can't hear it. So if somebody is in a place where maybe they need to stay quiet, they can mute the audio, it will still be captioning. They can even flick to a whole new tab, open that up, watch that, or for example, like maybe be reading a journal article, hopefully not on Facebook, and then they can come back and it will still be captioning. And then if I pause that, actually, I'll turn the audio back
Air
on.
flows down its concentration.
So a couple of cool things about that. So you'll notice that as it's captioning, the AI will start to go back and change things as it starts to understand the context of what it's talking about. It will also put in punctuation as well to its best ability. And a couple of things like I mentioned in the presentation, there's an auto scroll on and off button. So you'll notice it was on then, and that's why it follows the captions through as it's going. But if I turn auto scroll off, this means that you can scroll through at your own pace. So if, for example, if anybody is like me, and when I was at university, maybe I was just a terrible student, but I would miss things frequently. I struggle with anxiety myself, and I would always find something to be anxious about. And then I would catch the end of a sentence and think, oh, that sounded important. I probably should have listened to that. So the cool thing with this is you can scroll back up and reread the part that you missed. Or, like I said, if you're hearing impaired, then you can obviously just follow it through at your own pace or have a slow reading speed, for example. The other cool thing is the download button. So if I go ahead and click download, down the bottom, it will open up, it will download a text file. Now, I apologize, I am a Mac user. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm a bit of a Mac fanboy. And it does open up automatically with text edit, which I know is not the prettiest of the lot. And I also have dark mode on. But it will then download a full transcript of what you just captioned. And you can go ahead and do what you want with this. So this is fully editable. You could obviously get it to open up with Word. You can go through, you can take stuff out, you can add things in, you could do as you wish with this, or even just save the full transcript. So that's a really nice option as well. Now I'll show you working with one other video as well, just to show its sort of capabilities. So we get asked a lot about how it will deal with and not just complex lexicon, but also different accents. And I was actually sent this by an assessor a while ago to say, hey, look, how will it deal with something like this? So I now use it in all of my demos. So I'll jump over the large intro that this guy has, and I'll do the same thing. So I'll go into captioned. I'll go with a different theme. So let's go to sort of like a creamish background, and we'll go with British English for this. So if a student's ever unsure as to which of their sort of complex lexicon option to choose, we've added a lot of the complex lexicon into British English as well, so students aren't stuck too much on that side. And I'll play this back, and you'll see how it deals with stronger accents.
Hello everyone and welcome to our channel Chemical Kira. As this is the very first video in the fluid mechanics section, so we are going to discuss the syllabus for the fluid mechanics. Starting with the unit 1, that is fluid properties and fundamentals of flow, and the contents are brief history of fluid mechanics, fluids and their properties, continuum, density, viscosity, surface tension, compressibility and bulk modulus. Concept.
Now I'll pause it there because I've got to go through the desktop version very briefly, and then I'll obviously, so that Rich has some time to go through TalkType, but you can kind of see it does exactly the same thing. I can download that, I can turn my auto scroll on and off, and I can do as I wish with all that good stuff. Now we also have a desktop version, and this is also included in the same package. So this isn't something separate that you'll have to recommend, for example, if you're an assessor. The captioned will come with both the browser version and the desktop version. And the desktop version, the reason why somebody might use the desktop version is for a couple of different reasons. So if, for example, their audio isn't playing through the browser and they've maybe got the Zoom app, or they've got the MS Teams app, or they're playing back something from a digital voice recorder or something. Now, just for example purposes, I'll use audio notetaker because obviously that holds audio, and I'll play something back from here with captioned running. So this is the desktop version, looks very similar. You can change the subject, the theme, all that good stuff. The most important thing on the desktop version is changing between either applications or microphone. And I'll show you the difference between that. So that's applications will be computer audio. So any audio coming from the computer, it'll be able to pick that up. So if I click start captioning, click play.
Of course, time-travelling movies are created to entertain, so realism isn't necessarily top of the agenda. But it's really important to understand that much of what we know about time travel is still purely theoretical. So rather than neat distinctions of fact and fiction, it's more...
So I'll pause that there, but just so you can kind of get an idea, it will work exactly the same way. You get your auto scroll, you get your download, and you can do what you want with that. The other really cool thing about the desktop version is the microphone options. So when students are back live in lectures or one-to-one support sessions that are actually live, then they could switch to microphone. Now, I don't actually have a microphone plugged in, but the microphone that's on the computer should work all right. But we probably suggest the Samsung Go mic for this to pick up like a lecture, for example. So if they are actually live in a lecture, they can just open up Caption Desktop, switch to microphone, click start captioning. And then as I start to speak, I could be sat in a lecture and it's very, very strange watching what you're saying being captioned. But I could be sat in a lecture, listening to the lecturer. It will all be captioned straight in front of me. I could also be sat with my colleagues talking about a presentation that I've got to do, or I could be sat in a one-to-one support session or something like that. So yeah, this is another really cool feature and something that I think sort of makes captions stand out. But that's it. I tried to keep to, because I know that we're doing 20 minutes on this and then 10 minutes on TalkType, but I hope I sort of covered everything in a very, very brief period. I know that a lot of, I apologize to all the trainers that are on that have probably listened to the audio note taker audio a million times, but I just use it as an example. But yeah, thank you so much. Listen, please get in touch if you want more detail, if you want a demo copy, or if you want me to go through it in more depth, even if you'd like a one-on-one, then yeah, just please do get in touch. And I hope I didn't bore you too much. I had a hard act to follow, but yeah, so I hope I didn't bring it down too many gears, but thank you very much. And yeah, I'll stop sharing now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ed. It was a brilliant presentation, nevertheless, even after that hard act. But I think we're going to move on to Richard next, who I'll hand over to talk a bit about TalkType.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks very much, Ross, and cheers, Ed, for going through Caption. So yeah, my name's Rich. For those of you who don't know me, yeah, thanks for inviting me along. So I'm one of the directors of a company called CareScribe, which owns the products of Captioned and TalkType. So Ed's sort of gone through one side of our sort of product range, so Captioned, and I'm going to talk through very briefly through TalkType. Which, as you'll see, are kind of very similar and related in a lot of ways, but do slightly different things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen first of all. So bear with me a sec. Share screen. There we go. Cool. So hopefully you can see my screen now. You'll never guess who made the presentation. There we go. So again, I'm not going to sort of bore you with slides. I'm going to just talk you through the product a little bit, and then I'll run a demo so you can see it in action. So TalkType is essentially a piece of dictation software. So about 2 years ago, whilst also developing Captioned, we started to develop TalkType. TalkType really came out of a gap in the market that opened up because Dragon, a really popular piece of dictation software, stopped supporting Mac. And we were, because of some other work we did, we were asked quite regularly about dictation on Mac. And so we started to look into it more and more. And what we found was that there wasn't any real products out there other than what was built into Mac. And what we found built into Mac missed some sort of clear features that we knew that we would have wanted. So we started a pretty lengthy and challenging development process to build our own Mac-based dictation software. And that's what TalkType is. So it's a Mac-based dictation program that works offline and is designed to give you a high level of accuracy in dictation pretty much anywhere on your computer. So this is what the software looks like. And again, some of Ed's 3D modeling coming in handy here. So this is what the software looks like, a relatively straightforward toolbar. You've got two big buttons in the middle there, and you've got two words either side. You've got the word on the far left there, you've got the word commands, which gives you, you click on that, you get a drop-down list of all the different voice commands you can use to control and navigate your computer by voice. On the far right-hand side, you've got the word settings. Under there, you can do some customizations like adding in custom terminology, custom shortcuts, numerical, how you display numbers, how you display dates, things like that. You can do all that under settings. And then you've got two buttons in the middle. You've got the dictation button there, which won't surprise you that you click that and you can dictate. So click that, it goes green, and you can dictate anywhere on your computer. So wherever you put the cursor, you'll be able to dictate. And next to it, you've got the command button. So click that and you can navigate your computer by voice and use those commands as listed in, under the commands sort of search area to navigate and control your computer by voice. You can either click between them or you can navigate between them by voice. So you can toggle between them by voice, say in either dictation mode or command mode, and it will toggle between the two. You can also use hotkeys as well to toggle between them. So I'm going to stop there for sort of PowerPoint, and I'm going to run a quick demo. So I'll navigate outside of that, and you can see it then in action. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the application. So first thing to do, open it up. So I'm just going to go across. Where is it? There it is. Click here, and that will open up the application. So as you can see, you've got the toolbar here, the display bar underneath. First thing to show you is a few little bits. Commands. So on the left here, you've got the commands button. If I click that, I've got a list of commands. I can search them here if I want to. I can also download them as a PDF or print them out. Scroll through, you can see all the different sort of voice commands and things you can do and get the software to do. So that is there, relatively straightforward. You've got settings. Under settings, there's not too much to show you. If I go to processing, and there's a few bits. If some of you were on previous demos, then this wouldn't have been there. So at the top there, you've got punctuation. You can turn automatic punctuation on and off. Below, you've got the display bar, which is this bar here. You can choose to have that or not have that. I prefer to have it because I like the sort of immediate feedback of I've spoken, I can see it appear, rather than any sort of a delay. You can change how your text appears in here. You can change the fonts or the font size. There's a profanity filter, which is more for younger users, but that is there. Auto date, so you can choose how you want dates to be formatted, whether they're sort of written or you know, in the day, month, year sort of format. You can also choose number formatting as well, so how you want numbers to appear, all of them words, all of the numbers, or automatic, where it kind of chooses for you based on context. You've got custom words, so you can add custom words to the software if you want to. If you click edit word list, you can just add words in there. And we've got custom shortcuts. And a shortcut essentially is, I've said this, you type this. So maybe there's a paragraph you use to open every letter, or maybe it's your address, or maybe it's a signature at the end of a letter. You can add a short phrase, so add signature, and it will just add that chunk of text. So you can do that there. It's also really useful if you've got someone who pronounces something in a way in which the software isn't picking it up. So if you keep saying, I don't know, a word and it keeps saying another word, then you can say every time I say this word,
type this. So that's quite useful. Then you've also got acronyms, and you've got some hotkeys at the bottom to be able to toggle dictation and commands if you wanted to. But we'll talk about that in a little while. So that's the settings to familiarize yourself with. Really pretty basic stuff, but it's all there. And this is the area that's getting the most attention. So just like I said, probably last time, if any of you were on, this is growing pretty quickly. So most of these are all new in the last few months, and we've got plenty more that are going to be added. So let's close that, and then we'll go to settings. Not settings, sorry. And then we'll go to dictation. And we've got the two big buttons in the middle. This one is the dictation button. This one is the commands button. As I said, you can toggle between them by voice, or you can click between them, or there's short keys, hotkeys as well, sorry, and that you can use if you want to. So let's dictate into this document. So to do that, I will just click this button, and then I will start dictating. This is a test of the dictation software. Full stop, new paragraph. Lupus erythematosus is a potentially severe condition characterized by the presence of autoantibodies against nuclear antigen. Full stop. New paragraph. Manifestations that are not included in the latest clinical criteria include pancreatitis and the SLE-mediated antiphospholipid syndrome. Full stop. New paragraph. Just going to stop there very briefly. Sorry, it's always medical stuff because it's a sentence that we use for demos, and I know it off by heart by now, so it's easy to use for demos. Now I'll show you some commands and sort of text commands and things. I'll make a mistake as well, so you can kind of see how you can get rid of mistakes and stuff like that. So here we go. Make a mistake. Scratch that. Let's give this a try. Command mode. Word center align. Go back one word. Press arrow left. Dictation mode. Quick. Command mode. Switch to Skype. Dictation mode. Hi there, how are you? Dictation mode. Command mode. Press enter. Switch to Google Chrome.
And yeah, and I'll sort of stop there and answer any questions that you might have. I'm sort of very conscious of time being bang on, essentially. So I can see questions kind of coming in then. So we'll happily sort of answer them. And for either TalkType or Captioned, I haven't quite looked at them yet, but any questions you've got, we'll pass on our contact details too. But there's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through two products. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you, Ed, as well. They both look like absolutely fantastic pieces of software. So next up, we have Yonah, who will be talking about even more groundbreaking inclusive tech that is hopefully set to come in the future. In fact, you might not even know about it yet.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great opportunity to talk about inclusive technology. First of all, I would love to present myself and how I've been involved in this field for a while. I'm focused on the future of neurodiversity inclusive technology. On one hand, I'm working on long-term initiatives focused on connection of the research and such fields as ability, disability, diversity, mental health. I'm a part of such ecosystems like 500 startups, INSEAD, and European Commission, mostly is an entrepreneur in residence. So my work is helping entrepreneurs and startups working on such technologies like AI for dyslexia, AI for visual impairment, hearing impairment, different type of assistive technologies, technology focused on children, youth, young people, underrepresented ones. At the same time, I'm involved in projects in communities related to ethics and policies. Unfortunately, until today, we really lack guidance on how to develop such stuff like social robots at schools, aligning with children's rights, human rights. And I'm trying to push ecosystem. For instance, in Canada is Montreal AI Ethics Institute. In UK is ecosystems like women AI, teens in AI, and we try to come up with more ethical approach to technology. So today I would love to talk about challenges we face on the journey to make our ecosystem more inclusive and steps I expect to see in the next year, in this year, and in the next year. Based on my experience and based on the experience of my fellows, I believe this information will be specifically useful for people who are involved in assistive technology, startup founders, product developers, designers, researchers, and educators who would love to implement such technologies in schools, hospitals, families, and so on. So, first of all, when we talk about inclusive technology, my peers typically say we achieved so great results in recent years. Just look at this. Microsoft and Amazon introduced accessibility programs. Google Glass collaborate with startup focused on autism. Tech companies experiment with neurodiverse hiring to implement more autistic people in engineering. Schools experiment with ADHD technology. So even artists use biofeedback and neurofeedback technology in order to control synthesizer and make music more interactive. Yeah, so on one hand, we have many groundbreaking technology, but unfortunately, we're really far from actual adoption. And we still, 90% of people with autism are not employed full time. Only 1 of 10 of people in real life have access to inclusive technology. So as for actual schools, families, medical institutions, situation in US, UK, and Europe is pretty similar. So for instance, for autism is like 80, 90% almost in every country. So I would love to share some actions we try to make in our communities, in technology communities, but also on more multilateral level of organizations like European Commission to come up some change. So I hope it inspire you to be more involved and maybe help us to make more change in this field. So one of the problem we still face is the lack of representation in data science, AI, and technology. So for instance, if we're talking about women, is about 10 or 50% of teams. As for about disabled people or autistic people or other different type of minorities, is just maybe less than 1%. So when we try to build some niche products, we just fail because we have no representation. And in most cases, when we try to deal with the user research, we're not able to ask right questions. and we fail to define the problem and solutions in the right way. So for instance, that's why I try to push ecosystem like Teens and AI, build hackathons focused on inclusive and disability technology to involve young people of different backgrounds, including people with disabilities, to become inventors, maybe remotely with assistance, but being presented in ecosystem to have a voice, to have ability to connect the dots with customers and markets. Second thing is a lack of data. Most of the neurological disorders, multiple sclerosis, different type of mental health disorders, they are very complex. And then startups try to solve these challenges. We typically fail in user research because we're not able to access hospitals, patients, doctors, and we're trying to work on open source projects focused on diversity, health, mental health, data about particular disorders. So for instance, if you're a startup working on problems related to mental health, you're able to find the patient data across the globe. Or if you work on brain tumors, you're able to find an MRI across patients in different countries. Unfortunately, just on the rise, it's mostly driven by some academic institutions in US and UK. But we really need more projects specifically related to physical disabilities, neurological disorders in order to help startups, because I mentor startups in 500s and most of them fail specifically on pre-seed and seed stage, so early stage, because we're not able to define the problem correctly and align solution to problem correctly. They lack the data. We need more access. Unfortunately, until they become big, hospitals, families, doctors are not open to work with them or provide them these insights. So we need more open medical research community and turn it into open and data science platforms in order to facilitate this change. Another thing is a funding problem. Unfortunately, even successful teams from MIT, Harvard, Oxford, often fail to get a funding because assistive technology, inclusive technology startups are not meet requirements of so-called Y Combinator or 500 metrics. So we need more funding in initial stage. We have a longer period of growth. So very often, so talented teams with so promising products just not able to get funding. So one of the solutions is a hybrid funding. So for instance, specifically related to initiatives driven by European Commission, and I know there are some ideas and initiatives in the UK as well. So it's focused on a combination of a public funding, for instance, as a European Innovation Commission that try to push projects focused on dyslexia, visual and hearing impairment, physical disabilities, creating ed tech, health tech programs, specifically for early stage startups. And after that, they become a part of the venture ecosystems for further development. But unfortunately, if we completely erase this element of public or philanthropic support or a more hybrid like a crowdfunding support, so a startup just fail. I mean, I've been a witness of many so talented teams related to, for instance, multiple sclerosis or neuroimmune disorders and so on. And even after some grant support, which was relatively small, we would just had enough funding to reach, for instance, a seed stage or Series A, and they just unfortunately died. The problem number 4 is ethics and policies. Unfortunately, just recently, countries like UK and countries of European Union and Asia Pacific came up with a universal responsible AI in technology framework. So basically how to develop human-centered technology for children, disabled people, just maybe right now, but it's still just the beginning. Just right now, UNICEF issued responsible AI framework for children, children human rights. So we just in the beginning to have an open source data to how to be aligned with policies. So before that, startups work on some stuff, but after that, for instance, they try to get a funding from European Commission and they fail because we're not meet some requirements, but they had no idea what type of requirements we should meet. For instance, I judge for startups and I need to evaluate data privacy, ethical use of data, ethical treat of your customer, and many criteria when I judge educational or healthcare startups. But at some point, we had no any education and open source data about these policies, kind of a clear and transparent game for every agent and company in this field. At the same time, countries itself were very disconnected. We have, for instance, pretty clear data security and privacy in European Union due to a GDPR, but at the same time in US, it's only CCPA is a customer policy, and it's only for California. And we almost had no such policies, for instance, in Asia Pacific. And then companies try to scale their product. They just had no idea how to make it correctly. So for instance, just recently, I work on the AI ethics program focused on inclusive disability technology. And just maybe a few days ago, I presented to European Union projects, and I hope to integrate it further. For sure, it's just the beginning, and we need much more efforts to grow it further and integrate it into a startup ecosystem, 500s, Y Combinator, to make venture funds familiar about that. So we should care not only about money, but about impact, about how it should be aligned with the ethical considerations and policies. And the last thing is communities. I believe, though we have some support from above, I would say, I believe the actual innovation always go from the bottom. And one of the biggest examples and the greatest examples of innovation I typically see are presented through hackathons. For instance, UK is just an amazing place where I face such ecosystems like Women in AI, We in AI, Teens in AI, Inspired Minds, in different technology rework, in many AI and technology ecosystems, would work on events with gather many young people who would love to use their ideas to help the world. And basically, when I judge hackathons in Europe and Asia and Middle East, I explored almost every young person today actually care about this problem, not because someone said it, but they actually feel what we need more inclusive ecosystem. We should help people being presented. So many startups are actually focused on mental health, disability, inclusion, fair involvement on different type of individuals. And we just need to support this ecosystem and connect them. So if you, someone who work on such technologies, I really encourage you to become a part of this ecosystem, join some nearly hackathon, some AI community, because it's really helpful, because after that you will be able to go further with your ideas for growth. Yeah, it's a kind of my main, I would say, advice. I'm always happy to connect my fellow startup founders. We still have so many stuff to do, and I'm pretty pessimistic typically, but I do my best to facilitate some change in this field. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to Yonah for sharing with us about the progress which is being made regarding inclusivity in tech, and the actions which are being made by startups and some of the organizations which you mentioned there. Obviously, there is still more work to do, but it's really good to know that those steps are being taken, because technology in our lives is omnipresent really, and we need to make sure that it is inclusive for everyone. And we know that our audience today here is working on the ground roots level, but like Yonah said, if you feel like you can make even more of a difference compared to what you already do, please do feel free to get in touch with him. And I should really stress that this mind map, which everyone has access to, includes people's details. So you can see over here that if you want to get in touch with Yonah, there's a link to his website, his LinkedIn, and the podcast which he does about inclusive tech. And the same goes for all of our other presenters here today. So you'll see people from TalkType, they've got their contact details there and some extra documents about the products which they showed earlier. But we'd now like to move on to our next talk, which is going to be by Oliver Fengel, who is the founder and director of Advance, the disability consultants. Just before I hand over to Oliver, just like to make sure that everyone knows that during today's talk with Oliver, there will be an interactive activity where people can share their thoughts about what he's talking about in this mind map, which he's going to reference to at the end of his discussion. So I'll stop sharing my screen and also put in the chat the link so you can access to this mind map. And I'll now hand over to Oliver.
Thank you, Ross. Hello, everybody. Thank you and welcome. My name is Oliver Fengel. I'm the founding director of Advance for Disability Consultants. And obviously, as Ross has explained today, we're going to be doing a mind map at the end of the session around basically some of the barriers and challenges that autistic graduates experience going from education to employment. So what we will need you to do for the next 20 minutes or so while you're listening to me is put some of your comments and some of the questions you might have in the Q&A box at the bottom. And then what we'll be doing is we'll be getting some divergent perspectives at the end of the session to see how we can discuss and go forward with how to help autistic graduates successfully transition from education to employment. So yeah, a bit about me. Advanced Disability Consultants, we're a specialist autism consultancy business. We deliver training projects and consultancy to organisations, really to give them the confidence, knowledge and skills to be able to successfully recruit, support and develop autistic talent within their workplaces. And we realise that in the UK, only 16% of people on the autistic spectrum are in full-time employment. Globally, it's less than 20%. And I'm hoping that by the end of today's session, as academic institutions, you've got more ideas of how you can help play your part in helping autistic students successfully transition from education to employment. So my employment experience, I have to confess, it's not one that I talk about an awful lot in presentations, if I'm being really honest. But yeah, for my employment experiences, I've been told in the past that I would never amount to anything, that disclosing that I was autistic in the workplace was something that I shouldn't have done. I've been accused of being a bully in the workplace. I've been bullied and had condescending behaviour. But also, it made me realise when I was putting this presentation together that I never had any careers advice when I was going through the education system. I didn't know my strengths and weaknesses. I didn't know what a good CV was. I didn't know how to write a personal statement. I didn't know how to prepare for an interview. All of these factors really played a major part in me having so many of the difficult employment experiences I've had. I've also had some really good employment experiences where employers have treated me as Oliver the individual, not Oliver and a person with autism who is somehow different because he's autistic. Now, for me personally, there's so much more we can do, and I'm hoping that you guys are going to get some more ideas over the next few slides of what we're all going to do differently to help successfully allow autistic graduates to transition from education to employment. So the interview process. Autistic people, generally speaking, like structure, routine and certainty and a natural flow to their day. The interview process is sadly often not like that. Questions that will come up during the interview process, such as, tell me about yourself. So how did you find your last job? Autistic people often interpret and implement language literally, and this can be a real challenge for an interviewer and a hiring manager when they're told by an autistic graduate that oh, I found my last job on the website or in the newspaper, or so tell me about yourself, and they end up with a story about their dogs and their cats and all their interests and all their holidays. And the hiring manager wants to hear about their employment experiences. As universities, you might want to help autistic graduates think about, let's say it was okay to reframe that question at interview and say, well, can that question be reframed to something like, so tell me about your employment experiences? It gets to the heart of the question, and it allows the autistic graduate to think, well, actually, I can honestly answer that question quite straightforwardly because I know what's expected of me. They might require reasonable adjustments during the interview process. Difficulties with video conferencing software. I know last year when I first started using Zoom, I didn't have a clue. I think I must have spent about a week having Zoom lessons at home just to learn how to use it. I'm not ashamed to admit that, but they might need help because of slower processing speed with using video conferencing software. You might want to think about helping them with that. You might want to think about help with how they can practice certain types of interview questions. Bear in mind, the interview is an exam. Also, soft skills. No one ever really teaches you about how to sell yourselves at an interview. Autistic people, by their very nature, are inherently honest, and that's a fundamentally brilliant quality. But at an interview, you want to be emphasizing and almost overstating your skills to be the best version of yourself as possible. Bear in mind that autistic graduates are going up against probably 3,000 or 4,000 other people for graduate schemes. We want to give them as good an opportunity as any other graduate to be successful during that process. External providers often offer interview skills training sessions, and they can be really useful. You want to work with careers advisors, SENs, all of those kinds of organisations can make a really big difference in helping autistic graduates understand the interview process successfully. Demonstrating skills, and this can be done through a variety of ways. Industrial placements are excellent. Work experience, internships, inserts days, careers days. Maybe you've got dedicated employers you work with that are autism inclusive that can really help in that process. For an autistic graduate, you might want to think with them, well, have you had any employment experience? If so, demonstrate your skills in your personal profile. What key responsibilities have you got? If they haven't had any work experience, they might want to think about what voluntary work they've done. I know that's very difficult in the current climate, but they might want to think about that. For me personally, I've done a lot of blogging and vlogging. Thinking outside of the box often gets you noticed. Blogging about perhaps their university experiences, what it means to be differently abled, what their experiences are being autistic at university and in education, or maybe in society. They might want to think about the so-called soft skills that I've mentioned around networking. I mean, LinkedIn is a perfect thing. Do you want to know about the company or industry you want to work for? What are their values? What do they believe in? Why do my values align with their values? Those kinds of things, really. The sort of soft skills training. You might want to look at soft skills training from external providers to make a big difference in helping autistic graduates understand how they can demonstrate those kinds of key skills that will make them stand out at the interview process. So what's some of the advice we give? They should highlight the skills for each job role they've done. If they haven't had any employment experience, I wouldn't worry too much. I would think more about what they learned from careers days, jobs fairs, careers talks. Maybe you think about some of the key core skills they've learned during the academic process, during their time with you. I would always say a section for key responsibilities. It defines really what the role was and what they've learned. Again, if they haven't had any kinds of employment, think about what they've learned through learning those core learning skills and the key skills. I think that's a really important part of the process. They want to disclose the strengths of your autism when applying for roles. Too often when graduates apply for jobs, they apply for an applicant tracker system, it will just say, so disclose do you have a disability as defined under the Equality Act 2010? I'm sure many of us are familiar with that, but there's often not a drop-down box after that. Many of you have probably noticed that. And it makes disclosure feel like it's a negative process, and that actually disclosing is something wrong, and actually you shouldn't be sharing that. We want to make autism a positive thing, and actually disclosing the strengths of your autism. What have you done with blogging, vlogging? What work have you maybe done to help local autism charities? Anything that shows autism in a positive light, in a proactive way, makes a huge difference. Consider voluntary work, like I said, blogging, etc., to bolster your CV. Suggest to the graduates, the more they can stand out from the crowd, the better their chances. Look at, say, for instance, law firms. A good Magic or Silver Circle law firm, on average, anywhere between 1,000 to 4,000 people will apply for a graduate scheme that maybe perhaps takes between 10 and 60 people per year. That is a very small percentage. Anything that can give them the extra edge to be successful and get the career and opportunities they want is the most important thing in this process. So what's the importance of writing a good CV? Now, autistic graduates might provide too much detail when writing a personal profile. They might struggle to meet deadlines when actually applying for a graduate scheme and not realise that graduate scheme deadline date is passed. They might struggle with prioritising what graduate scheme to apply for first, little realising that that's actually not their top priority. You might want to look at support for them from external providers with CV writing skills. And there's a lot of tips and advice that we can suggest as an organisation to help with that. So what advice would we give? Keep it short. A good personal profile, I'm sure many of you are aware, is 3 to 4 sentences. Emphasise to the autistic graduate key action words, words that really disclose their strengths and why they are the best candidate for this role, most important thing in this process. Hand in before deadline, we would recommend a couple of things. A RAG status tracker, red, amber, green tracker. Red is a critical one. We need to get this done in the next few days. Green, we've got a little bit of time. That is a really good way of making sure that the process of applying for jobs is succinct and organised. I think another one is having a job application tracker. Name of job, name of company, job link to the job, day you applied for it, day of deadline. That way you can keep a clear link of what you've applied for and whether you've been successful, unsuccessful, you're still waiting. It's a good way of knowing what to do in that part of the process. State why you are the best candidate, really important. A good personal profile. A good personal profile should be about half a page long. You might want to break it down into different areas of different skills you've got with certain key action words. It's a really important part of the process, helping them write a good personal statement. A good personal statement from day one will make a huge difference to applying to any graduate scheme. And believe me, graduate schemes want to see a really good personal profile that stands out from the crowd. Provide information in correct format. You might want to think about getting autistic graduates to write CVs in several different formats. I know that might sound a bit I guess, taking too long with the whole process is the words I'm trying to think of, or why do you need to write multiple CVs? But bear in mind, different employers and different industries have different ways of expecting CVs and the kinds of formats they want. Various templates for different industries and different job roles makes a big difference. It just shows that you haven't just got one generic format and you haven't actually thought about the process. They've actually taken time to think about the process and they know what's expected. Believe me, that will get a lot of respect and kudos from graduate schemes who will think, well, yeah, actually, this candidate has really gone away and thought about what they need to do. We would like to consider them for the next stage of the process. Very important. Right company, right role. And this is a really interesting one. Me and Ross were discussing this actually a few weeks before the presentation. It's something I guess I've never really thought about until I launched Advanced Disability Consultants. But there's a temptation here for an autistic graduate to get onto the first placement they've applied for, or to accept the first placement rather that they've been offered. But there's a few factors that you want to help them consider. Does the organisation have a neurodiversity programme? Increasingly more organisations do. What sort of work has the organisation done in the autism space? What kind of training, education and awareness has it done? Where does it feature on a diversity inclusion index for inclusive employers? There's a list of that, of the 100 most recommended employers for that. How did the autistic graduate feel at interview? I went for a job interview once and the recruiters accused me of lying about my CV. I've never had that in an interview until then. I went away from that and I thought, no way I've got the job. 2 days later, they offered me the job. It was probably the biggest mistake of my life because I didn't follow my gut instincts and turn down the job. I think they're the kinds of things you want to think about. You also want to think about employee review websites. Glassdoor is a really good one. What do current and past employees think of that employer? Where do they score highly? Where do they not? If there's an awful lot of low scores, you want to be very careful about wanting to work there. If there's a lot of high scores, it's generally a better indicator, but I would certainly think those kinds of areas are really important to look at. Now, changing the culture, this is really important. Today, we're talking about transitioning for autistic graduates from education to employment. But actually, that transitionary period should start when they leave sixth form college at 18. Are we helping them with CVs, personal statements, interview skills, writing a CV, careers fairs, careers days, support from SENs, support from external providers from day one? From day one, we need to be helping them with all of those key skills, networking as well, blogging, vlogging, how to sell themselves at interview. Are we thinking about all those key skills from day one when they start your university at the age of 18? Those key skills from day one at the age of 18 will help them identify how they can be the best version of themselves possible and the best possible chance of them actually sustaining employment when they leave university at 21. But also as academic institutions, you have a responsibility to encourage disclosure and openness of autism within your academic institutions. Too often, graduates and those leaving college will often say that disclosing they were autistic during the academic process often saw them penalised in certain universities, or was often seen as a barrier and an impediment to opportunity. And actually, that should not be the case in any instance. And as universities, you should deliver a culture not of just awareness and understanding, but of acceptance, inclusion, and embracement of autism. We're talking about autism is not so much the exception, but it's the rule within your organisation to create an autism inclusive culture. And I think that is a really important thing for just about every single academic institution to do to support autistic graduates on their journey into employment. So the Access to Work scheme. Now the Access to Work scheme is really important. I've put a link here for the gov.uk. It's a pot of money from the government that any institutions in the public and private sector can access. It doesn't have to be paid back. It helps with organisational training. Now imagine as an academic institution that certain parts of your organisation, maybe HR and recruitment, and maybe other central services functions haven't had enough training and awareness of autism or how to support autistic graduates when they're disclosing. It can really help with furthering understanding, awareness, but also confidence and knowledge about how to support autistic graduates during their time at university with you. It sustains employment as well. So actually when they transition from education to employment, not just as the universities claiming this money, but when it's transitioned from university to the private sector or the public sector, it's sustaining employment as well. Any industry, public and private sector, can access this money, and I think it's a really, really useful resource that too often actually doesn't get discussed about. And I'm not sure how many organisations are really aware of how successful the Access to Work scheme is in sustaining and supporting employment for those on the autistic spectrum in the UK. So we talked a bit about the beginning about the barriers preventing autistic graduates from successfully transitioning from university to employment. So we're now going to ask Ross to share his screen again with the mind map with all the branches that you have perhaps put on. And I'm just going to see what we've got in the Q&A. So
brilliant. 1 second.
No worries. The joys of technology, everybody, on a Wednesday lunchtime. Yes. It's a really good question here from Sarah Croxford about many recruitment companies are using AI algorithms to screen candidates for interviews. What's your guidance for employers around AI to find the right person, and the fact that AI still has bias, which may not be beneficial to candidates? I think that's a really good one, to be honest. I personally think technology still has a long way to go, but I think fundamentally it's about human constructs and human behaviours, and about having the conversations and about changing the culture and the discussion. I think AI and technology is the way forward for supporting autistic people in the workplace, but I think for now it's much more about the human constructs, the human behaviours, having the discussions, having the training, having the knowledge, having the skills, and actually saying that we want to be autism inclusive. I think too often with AI and tech in the recruitment process, those with conditions like autism unfortunately end up finding themselves screened out because the way an applicant tracker system is designed. As I talked about earlier, too often with applicant tracker systems, there's this danger, but they only have a box which says, are you disabled as defined under the Equality Act, so they don't allow you to expand beyond that. Now, for some employers, they automatically get a red flag, or there's a view of like, oh, well, why should you be disclosing your autism in the workplace? I still see an awful lot of that on LinkedIn, and it's horrifying, but it's not surprising. I think I would certainly think technology is good, but I think it's about using assistive, inclusive technology such as Ayoa in that process. I would be careful about what kinds of tech companies I would use. I would look at what kind of software they're doing, how have they benefited organisations, how have they benefited autistic people. So I would certainly look around and see what the best models and markets are before definitively going with any specific company. I think that's the key thing there. So looking at some of the other, I'm going to just reduce that for a second, bear with me. So yeah, some of the other values here we've got, there is a wrong culture which puts you off. Yeah, I think definitely, I think that's a major part of the problem in a lot of organisations, that the culture, we haven't created the human constructs and behaviours of a good culture, but also good subcultures within organisations to actually change that. As an organisation and various external providers offer sessions around autism culture change in the workplace. Yeah, another really good point here. I got to the end of my degree about ever realising the need to think about the next step, because often I suspect there may have not been the careers opportunities. A careers advisor may not have said, actually, hang on a minute, have you thought about this, this and this? Have you thought about how you write your CV? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are those core soft skills around networking, sales, all of those kinds of things? Because bear in mind, The interview process is a sales pitch. It's an exam and a sales pitch all rolled into one. And for an autistic graduate, that's a real challenge. And I think it's a real challenge at universities to have still got to master. They've got to understand in this triangulation of change, they've got to play a pivotal role in helping the transitionary period of funneling autistic talent from university into employment. I think employer values and that of the organisation. Do organisations really believe their values, or are they just sloganistic? And by that, do I mean, I speak to clients probably every week, and I ask their organisation about their values. And if the organisation directors can't understand the values, then it already says there's something fundamentally wrong with the culture. Then how are they going to understand how to create a culture of inclusivity when supporting autistic talent in the workplace? Regaining confidence after not gaining other jobs. Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. You lose a job, you get dismissed from a job because the employer didn't understand you or didn't want to give you the reasonable adjustments. Your confidence is not. It takes a long time to get back there. You believe what the employer said, that you'll never amount to anything. But actually, you didn't fail. The employer failed you by not delivering the reasonable adjustments so that you could be successful. Despite getting a job, not feeling it's a right fit, have they properly assimilated you into the organisational culture? Have they really shared your diagnosis if you chose to? Have they had the right training and support for that team and the organisation? Again, sadly, another common problem. The hiring manager just thinks, oh, well, I've employed him. He or she is autistic. It's fine. They'll assimilate it anywhere into the organisation. Little realising that the team already is very tightly knit and doesn't like outsiders or doesn't like people who think and behave differently in the workplace. Just not getting how things work and what to do. Yeah, I think again, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding what a good personal statement is, writing a good CV. What kind of support have I had in terms of careers fairs? Have there been inclusive employers that have come into my university to talk about, well, actually, so what, you're autistic? Autism is your superpower. You can make a difference to any industry you work in if you truly believe that that's what you want to do. Yeah, and sadly, that's another one. Or should we have a look across and see what else we've got, Ross, on the other side of the yeah, again, I mean, lack of experience. Too often employers think, well, because you haven't had any employment experience based on prior to leaving university, that's somehow an impediment. But actually, no, we need to think more outside the box, like I talked about. The soft skills, the networking, the sales pitches, the blogging, anything that, even voluntary work, all of those kinds of things that make you think stand outside the box makes a huge difference. I mean, I managed to once wangle my way onto an investment bank's diversity inclusion board. I also managed to try to wangle my way onto another global think tank as well a few years ago to try to make myself stand out from the crowd. They are certainly things that I would advise doing as well. Rephrasing questions to get to the heart of the question. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about yourself and how did you find your last job? Two of the hardest questions to answer at interview, and they're questions that time and time again organisations will answer, not realising that actually they need to be rephrasing the question so they're actually autism inclusive. That a person, an autistic graduate, can confidently answer that question, knowing they're understanding the subtext and the context of what's expected and what they need to do. Knowing how to write a CV. I'll be absolutely frank and honest with all of you here today. 4 years ago, I didn't have a clue how to write a CV. I spent time with family and friends honing my skills on knowing how to write a CV, seeing what different kinds of CV templates are out there, understanding. I think for me, having launched Advanced Disability Consultants about a year and a half ago, I've made it my knowledge and my business to understand how different organisations expect CVs when people apply for roles. I've purposely on occasions applied for dummy roles of organisations to catch them out, to see what they aren't actually doing to support autistic people through the recruitment process. Organisational skills not being practiced. Again, this is another soft skill, but if we can get it right in academic institutions, then we can play a pivotal role in translating that from academia into employment successfully. The company culture needing to be inclusive. Sadly, too many organisations seem to follow HR trends and the latest HR data and think, oh, because so-and-so in oil and energy is doing that, we all must be doing that. But actually, we need to be doing a lot more in supporting autistic talent in the workplace. And that starts, among other things, by creating an autism inclusive culture. I've been Oliver Fengor, and it's been a privilege speaking to each and every one of you today. There is a link to, I'm just going to share my screen again, bear with me. Just to share my screen, just to show you what services we offer. Bear with me. So what do we offer as services? Thank you, Ross, for all your help as well with sharing with the mind. That was greatly appreciated. We offer autism lunch and learn training online or face-to-face. This is both public and the private sector.
Sorry.
Oh.
I can't see your screen at the moment. I don't think it's sharing. I don't know if you meant to.
Oh, is it not sharing? Bear with me. Share screen. Bear with.
There you go. It's loading up now. Yeah.
Apologies for that, everybody. That's the wonders of technology on a Wednesday lunchtime. Yeah. So what do we offer? We offer online autism lunch and learn training. It was face to face, but I don't think anyone's going anywhere face to face somehow for a while. Yeah. So that's around an introduction to autism and the recruitment process, employing people with autism. We do a lot of stuff around autism change management. We also offer projects and consultancy support around change management, talent management, performance management, organisational effectiveness and design, among other things. We do HR and recruitment tailored packages around interview skills training, job application training, CV writing, soft skills training, all of the kind of key ingredients that not just employers need, but autistic graduates need in the workplace to be successful. We do mentoring support for autistic colleagues. I think from my own experiences, that if I'd had someone that really understood my needs and requirements, I would have been more successful. So we do a lot of that as well. We do line manager training support. We realised that with autism in the workplace, it's not just an HR recruitment centric function. It's every single person in every single organisation playing a pivotal role in this process. We can help you create autism employee network groups and surveys. I'm sure probably many of you in universities do have that, but that's something we can help with. We can also help with surveys to understand the state of the nation in terms of how many autistic graduates we've got, what kinds of support do they need, and how we can further identify that. That's a link to our website. We'd certainly be happy to speak with each and every one of you in the next few days about what support we can offer you going forward. Thank you, each and every one of you today. It's been a pleasure and privilege speaking to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oliver. That was really interesting and some great tips there, especially because the job market is becoming more and more competitive and it's only going to continue to get more competitive. So today has been all about supporting students. So we wanted to end it by hearing from one directly. Next up, we have Amber, who is a first-year student and disability activist, and she also runs her own blog.
Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me all right.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my DSA experience and my path to university that's been far from straightforward, but you wouldn't have a clue with me just sat talking to you all today. If you hadn't already seen the blog logo or the description of my talk, disabilities that I have would have been completely invisible to you all. So I'm Amber and I'm 19 years old. I'm a blogger and self-proclaimed disability activist, as well as a first-year university student who's studying education studies. I've always been a little bit of a teacher's pet, but my education is something that has had to take somewhat of a backseat in the last 4.5 years, despite the fact this is the last thing my inner perfectionist and academic enthusiast would want to be the case. For at the moment, my #1 priority has been and continues to be managing my disabilities before even considering academics. I have myalgic encephalomyelitis. If you were here earlier for Rosie's talk, you'll see that medical conditions appear to have ridiculously long names that take forever to say. I've had that for almost 5 years. And then more recently, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia just 2 months into starting my undergraduate degree. I'm going to refer to myalgic encephalomyelitis as ME throughout, because it's just a little bit easier. You might recognise it. These conditions cause me a range of symptoms, including severe fatigue, widespread chronic pain, brain fog, which the only way I can describe that is like having bees in your brain, dizziness, muscle weakness, and nausea, to name a few. Both of these conditions also contributed to the fact that I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user and proud owner of Willow the power chair, who you'll see a picture of a little bit later on in the mind map. Being an ambulatory wheelchair user means I don't use my wheelchair all the time. I'm not wheelchair bound or stuck to it. I physically can walk, just not very far, without supervision or without experiencing severe pain and fatigue afterwards. So you can imagine that's not much fun, having limited independence at 19 years old. So using my chair allows me a lot more independence, prevents injuries and fatigue, and allows me to conserve energy for tasks other than physically walking around. I wouldn't have been able to attend university without it, because just getting to my classes, well, pre-lockdown anyway, would have been physically impossible. I like the best way to describe these conditions is like being powered by a singular Poundland own brand battery, whilst everyone else around you appears to have a never-ending supply of Duracell to keep them going. So they're all bouncing around like Duracell bunny, and you've run out of energy after half an hour. So I'm sure you can appreciate balancing all of this alongside university can be quite the challenge at times. That's where people like your lovely selves come in. Learning about the support that was available both from my university directly and through DSA and student finance was what cemented to me that I could in fact give higher education a go. I had read University and Chronic Illness, a Survival Guide with Hippa Stacey, who is a fellow ME sufferer, author, and a blogger who I am lucky enough to call my friend. This book empowered me to realise that maybe with the correct support in place, unlike my school experience, I could in fact do it, or at least try and see how I go in the further education world. If it didn't work, I could stop, but I would never know unless I tried. So that brings me on to my DSA experience. The actual application process for DSA was very straightforward once I had obtained a letter from my specialist explaining how my condition was going to impact me at university. This was quite a tricky process in the middle of a global pandemic, but we got there in the end with enough time to sort through the evidence. This was then sent off for approval by student finance. Thankfully, despite a lengthy wait, this was approved. And you can see now that Willow the power chair has just popped up in the pictures. So I was then able to book my needs assessment, having previously had a PIP, which is personal independence payment, which is a government benefit assessment. I was a bit of a nervous wreck leading up to my appointment, because there's nothing worse than having to explain all the things you can't do or you struggle with to a random stranger you'll never hear from again. It feels a bit like, I suppose, going up to some random, unsuspecting stranger in the coffee shop queue and then just blurting out your entire medical history. I don't think you'd enjoy doing that, nor would the person in the queue. Despite the fact my assessment took place virtually due to the pandemic, I couldn't have had a more positive experience. My DSA needs assessor was great. She was really mindful about accessibility, contacting me beforehand to make sure that any accessibility requirements that I needed, she was able to facilitate the best she could. In the actual assessment itself, she was incredibly thorough. She was patient and suggested things I hadn't even considered before. She was very much willing to tell me that she wasn't an expert in my condition. She wasn't a medical professional by any means, and that I had to take the lead in explaining how they impact me. She was keen to point out that every person's symptoms are unique, and therefore so are their needs. It was clearly evidence she had some basic knowledge of ME, but she never claimed to know best, and that was really empowering for me. It made me feel at ease and able to suggest things myself, in addition to her opinions about what could help me. She also didn't bat an eyelid when I had to lie down mid-assessment because I was a little bit dizzy, so that was also a positive. She then sent off her report, and this was approved by student finance, and my equipment and software was delivered a couple of weeks later to my university accommodation. This was where the lovely delivery man had to wait outside in the rain with the entirety of my halls block as someone set the fire alarm off halfway through the installation appointment after burning a piece of toast. We were very apologetic, but he didn't seem to mind too much. Getting the delivery of equipment really changed the game for me. I finally had a desk chair I could sit in for longer than 10 minutes without considerable pain, a bed wedge that meant I could easily study from bed with more ease on bad days, headphones with active noise reduction, which helps me to minimize the sensory sensitivity. Because of my ME, I have what's like a heightened awareness of sounds and light. So the headphones were really useful in the sound section because university halls aren't the quietest at times. Looking back now, I don't quite know how I managed without them. The true answer to that is I didn't really manage, at least not as well as I am now. DSA also funded me multiple different computer softwares that have really improved my ability to engage in my course, especially since it has been moved virtually. From Ayoa and its mind mapping software helping me to plan essays, break down tasks, or make sense of readings, or dictation software like Dragon, allowing me to verbally communicate my assignments when I'm from bed. And then I also have Read and Write, which is really helpful in helping me to process written information and collating sources for essays. It's quite amazing, really, just how much assistive technology has helped me, as it helps many other students as well. It really illustrated to me just how many of my struggles in education prior to university stemmed from not having the right support for one reason or another, be that funding or just lack of awareness. I feel really lucky to be in the position I am now, able to engage more fully in my degree, but also raise awareness of the benefits that assistive technology can have. Don't get me wrong, balancing a degree and multiple chronic illnesses is far from easy. There are still days where I question my body's ability to keep up with the course demands, as I'm plunged into another flare from talking to flatmates in the kitchen for too long. But I don't beat myself up as much for what I can't do anymore. It's taken a lot of work for me to realise that my health always has to come before my academics, and eventually it'll have to come before my future career. But that realisation is okay with Amber for now, because Amber 4 years ago would never have believed that university would ever have been possible, yet here I am. So that kind of brings me to the end of my talk. So thank you all very much for listening. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. And you can find more from me at my blog, which is Specks of Amber, or my Twitter, which is, my handle is just on my map there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Amber, for sharing that talk with us. I know that in the chat we've had loads of people sharing positive feedback already, and there are some questions also. So I might just open them up now to see if there's any which you'd like.
Yeah, I can't actually see any of the questions.
Okay, I'll read them out for you if I can find it. So everyone's actually in fact saying thank you and what an amazing story you shared. So there aren't any questions which I can see currently, but if there are any, we'll obviously get them over to you afterwards.
Yeah,
but
I'm more than happy to answer whatever.
Excellent, thank you very much. And as people can see, Amber's blog is there. And again, if you access our public mind map, you can actually get a link directly to her blog by clicking on this button here. And as you can see, it's appeared on the side there, and Amber's raising awareness about disabilities and assistive technology and her own experience. There's some really great reads on there, and that's why we got in contact with Amber in the first place for today. So thank you very much, Amber.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. And we're now going to move on to the very final part of today, which is the interactive quiz that we set up for you all. And there's numerous quizzes which we have available. So everyone should have, in fact, received an email yesterday, which gives you instructions on how you can take part in our quiz, and the name of the room which you will need to enter when prompted in order to gain access to our quiz. So I'm just going to open up the quiz on another screen for me in a moment. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second. Problem of having to do this virtually means that there's a few technicalities to get across to it, but we should be there any second now. But it is also good to note that the quiz, there are prizes for it at the end of today. So ourselves here at Ayoa will be sharing our CEO Chris Griffiths, his best-selling creative thinking book called The Creative Thinking Handbook, which is all about entrepreneurship and innovation. And in addition to that, we will be sharing some Ayoa teachers, some Ayoa t-shirts, should I say, which some people might like to get their hands on. And Learning Labs are putting together some goodie bags of everything Learning Labs, including some plant seeds, which tie in quite nicely with their mental health side of things. So if you want to add some greenery to the inside of your your house while we're still all locked away currently. And they're also very kindly donated a £30 Amazon voucher to the overall winner of the multiple quiz we're doing, and TalkType are throwing in a bottle of wine for someone as well. So that's really the biggest incentive, maybe. So if everyone has got their quizzes open now, hopefully they've been able to do that by checking back to the email which we had sent to you all yesterday. And then you'll be prompted to type in your room name. And then when you get to the bit to type in the actual or your actual name, can you make sure not to type in your name, but your email address instead? Because if you do end up being one of the 6 people who win a quiz, we will obviously need to get in contact with you to find about how we can send your prizes along to you wherever you might be in the country. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to share my screen with the quiz which we're going to be going through today. And we might just check the Q&A quickly in case people have any questions about this and they're not able to open the chat, just in case. We want to make sure everyone can take part in this. It's sometimes a bit tricky to get these things set up, obviously. Okay, it looks like there aren't too many questions, or my colleague has shared the actual link in case people are struggling with it. But if everyone's ready, hopefully now you can see the quiz is here on my screen, but you should also be able to follow along with it on your screen if you've got a second screen or open in another tab, for example. So the first question we've got, and we're going to give about 30 seconds each question before we move along to the next one, is what country was the term neurodiversity first coined in? We've got either the UK for option A, option B is America, option C is Australia, and then finally we've got Spain as option D. So if you'd like to vote for which one you think is the answer, and then we'll move across to the next one shortly. Okay, so some people are struggling to find their room name, which should have been emailed to them yesterday, but I've sent a backup room. We've got the neurodiversity room as a backup one. I just sent that into the chat, so maybe try that one if you haven't received it. And then we've also got another one called graduate room as well. So again, try typing that in too. Hopefully everyone is able to take part, and we're going to move on to question 2 now, which is how many dyslexic graduates each year on average go through university in the UK? So is it 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 or 40,000? So this was mentioned near the very start of today's event. So if you've been with us the whole way through, you might have to stretch your mind back a bit to see if you can remember this, or you might know it already, to be fair. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 or 40,000. Okay, and we're going to move on to question 3. Number 3 is, along with students via the DSA scheme, which of these companies also use Ayoa? So we've got the first one is BBC, then we've got McDonald's, Continental Tires, Samsung, and the University of Cambridge. So there's more than one correct answer here, and if you'd like to select every single one which is correct, that would be brilliant. So as we mentioned earlier, Ayoa is very versatile, so it can be used not just by students, but also those in the professional world too, with their colleagues in a collaborative nature. So some of those listed below, in fact, use Ayoa every day for their operations. And we're going to move on to question 4 now. This one is based on Learning Labs, and it's asking how many domains of mental wellness are there in Learning Labs Plus? Is it 2, 4, 6, or 8? So Emma Sheikey introduced this earlier as a new addition to Learning Labs, which is really great to see. And just wondering how many mental wellness domains there are in Learning Labs Plus. Okay, we're going to move on to question 5 now. This one's about TalkType, and it's asking if you can control other assistive technology by voice with TalkType dictation. So this one's a yes or no answer. Can you control other assistive technology by voice with TalkType dictation? I think we all saw with the presentation earlier that you could do a lot with TalkType, but can it also control other assistive technology? That is the question. Okay, now we're going to go across to question 6. And this one is based on Caption Ed. And the question is, what can Caption Ed caption? So a lot of captions in there. Can it do live lectures, live meetings, pre-recorded materials, or all of the above? Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a time to think about that one and answer the question. Now move on to question 7. And this one is regarding the British Dyslexia Association. We're asking you, which word do you think is missing from this British Dyslexia Association mission statement? So the mission statement is deliver blank solutions which break new ground in the field of dyslexia. So what word is missing there? Is it sustainable, innovative, modern, or outdated? The British Dyslexia Association has obviously been around for many decades trying to raise awareness of dyslexia and ensure that it's supported. But this is just one of their many mission statements which they have on their website. Okay, and now on to question 8. This one's based on Ayoa again, and we're asking you, what is the name for Ayoa's most visual and fluid style of taskboard? Is it bubbles, canvas view, ring organizer, or patchwork? So we've got 3 different styles of taskboards in Ayoa, but we're wondering what is the most visual and fluid one, the one which might be really good for those visual learners, for example. It was the one which was on screen most of the time whilst we were presenting Ayoa earlier in comparison to the other 2. But what is the name of it? Is it bubbles, canvas view, ring organizer, or patchwork? Okay, and then question 9. Which of these famous people are known to be neurodivergent? We've got quite a range of people across generations and countries here. So we've got Will Smith, Agatha Christie, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Radcliffe, Steve McQueen, Holly Willoughby, Greta Thunberg, Roald Dahl, Billie Eilish, Alan Turing, Emma Watson, and Simone Biles. Again, with this answer, there's more than one correct answer. So if you'd like to select all of those which you think are neurodivergent, you can do that now. So you can see that we've got people from all different industries. We've got actors, we've got climate change activists, authors, singers, gymnasts, you name it, they're all there. But which of them are neurodivergent? So I'll give that 5 more seconds for people to answer that one. And now we're going to move on to the final question. And this one you don't really need to answer. You're not going to be quizzed on this. There's no right or wrong answer, but have you learned something new today? We hope that you have. And if that is the case, please feel free to type in a short message just to let us know how you think the day went, what you might have learned by having listened to all of our events. And that will be the end of the quiz. So I'll give you just like another 10 to 15 seconds to type in anything which you might want to share with us there. It might be how well the day went. It might be how it could have been improved. I know we had a few technical issues here and there, but hopefully it ran fairly smoothly and everyone's enjoyed the day. Okay, so we'll finish the quiz there. And like I said, we won't show people's names here currently because of they hopefully have put their email address in. So we don't want to breach GDPR and people won't be able to see other people's email addresses. But after today's event, we will collect all of the results. And for those of you who came out top in whatever room you're in, you'll be in the chance to win some of those prizes. Like I mentioned, a £30 Amazon voucher, a goodies bags put together courtesy of Learning Labs, bottle of wine from TalkType and Caption Ed, along with a copy of Chris Griffiths' Creative Thinking Handbook, which is a best-selling creative thinking book in multiple countries around the world, and a few Ayoa t-shirts too, which you might like. But that wraps up everything for today. And as you can see, sharing on my screen here, we have had loads of various different events from different speakers, some of them sharing their experiences as neurodivergent individuals, some of us here from assistive tech companies, some of us even talking about the future of assistive tech in ways which we might never have thought about it before. But nevertheless, I really hope that everyone has enjoyed today. And for one last time, I'm just going to copy and paste the link to this mind map, which everyone can access. They don't even need an Ayoa free account. If you just copy and paste that into your browser, the link which I've just sent into the chat, you can access this mind map. And as you can see, if you zoom into any of the presentations, you'll see that a lot of us have added some takeaway resources. It's not actually pizza, unfortunately we can't send that to you, but if you would like to look at the Neurodiversity Worldwide video, which we unfortunately couldn't show you later, just click on the attachments icon here, and you can click on it to open it up in a new tab. There's some other Ayoa resources regarding neurodiversity here, which you can check out. Also, here is some information about the contributors who helped us with our neurodiversity worldwide video. And I'd really like to draw attention to the one in Holland. If you click on the notes section, they have actually created a neurodiversity Pride Day, which takes part in June on the 18th. So the 18th of June, 2021. If you want to find out more about that, click on the link there. And then another one, which I'd like to draw attention to, is in Nigeria. We got an amazing contribution from Stephen Emmanuel, who he goes around doing free trainings in classrooms in Nigeria to try and make them more inclusive. And he's trying to personally take part in the Autumn Gilliam Association training, which is a well-known way to support people with dyslexia. Unfortunately, this all costs a lot of money, and it's difficult for Stephen to do this all the time. But nevertheless, he keeps doing it. And a lady who he worked with in Canada, in fact, set up a GoFundMe page so he can get that training, which will really enable him to take his support of dyslexia and neurodiversity to the next level. Obviously, it's hard times for everyone, but if you would like to send some money to help Stephen and the work that he's doing supporting neurodiversity in Nigeria, there is a link here which you can access by opening that mind map and clicking on the notes section here. And information about everyone who contributed to the video is available there, because many of them work for neurodiversity charities he might be interested in. And any other resources related to today's presentations can again be found from this public mind map. Thank you ever so much for everyone who's joined us today. You will be receiving a recording of today's event, and there will also be information about how you can sign up for a more formal training session of Ayoa, because I appreciate that we did have a whistle-stop tour of it, but people will really want to know how Ayoa can support students in depth, really looking at the features, for example, in a lot of detail. So when you do work with students via Ayoa, or maybe if you're going to recommend Ayoa to students, you know that you've got all the knowledge, which means you can safely recommend it to them. So if you keep your eyes peeled for a follow-up email from us, you will be able to book a one-on-one demo session. And we really encourage you to invite your other colleagues, your other needs assessors, your other disability advisors, your other assistive tech trainers to these sessions. Because we're a new piece of assistive technology, only came about late in 2019. So Ayoa is probably new to all of you today, but we're still trying to spread the word and do all the great work to raise awareness of neurodiversity and ensure that students get the support they need, graduates get the support they need, and everyone in the workplace. So thank you very much for everyone who joined today. I hope you had a brilliant day, and hopefully hear from you in the not too fast future. Sorry, been talking too much today. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye for now.